Hello everybody and welcome to the very last round of the Candidates Tournament 2016 in Moscow. I'm Jan Gustafsson. I'm once again joined by Grandmaster Robin van Kampen. Robin, any games you're looking forward to today?
I think it's going to be such an exciting day, Jan. It's an all-deciding match today between Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces having to probably beat the very solid Sergei Karyakin. It's a bit of a complicated situation in the tournament, Jan, because there's another very important game which actually decides the outcome of the first place in this tournament, which is Vishy Anand having black against Peter Svidler. And it's a bit of a surprising system, but Anand could make history not by winning the tournament, but by winning his game, changing the tiebreaker of the first place. How exactly does that work, Jan?
Let's walk people through it. So the tiebreak system is complicated. First of all, if two guys are tied, there is no match, no playoff. It's decided on the tiebreakers. And the first tiebreaker is the head-to-head encounter, which let's assume Karyakin Caruana ends in a draw, then their head-to-head is 1-1, so that doesn't mean anything if they are the only two guys on 8 points after this round. Then the second tiebreaker is number of wins, which would be in Karyakin's favor, as he's lost a game, therefore he's won one more game than Caruana. So if Karyakin and Caruana draw, that means Karyakin wins the tournament, and now there is a big unless coming. Unless Vishy Anand also wins, because in that case we can see we would have three guys on 8 points, and that would mean that the first tiebreaker head-to-head all of a sudden would be in Fabiano Caruana's favor, because it would mean that Caruana has scored 2.5 out of 4 against his two rivals, Anand and Karyakin, while both of them would only have, I don't know, I can't count, would not have that many points. So it's all a little confusing, but bottom line is Karyakin and Caruana draw, Anand doesn't win, Karyakin wins the tournament. Anand wins, Karyakin Caruana draw, Caruana wins the tournament. Either of Caruana or Karyakin wins, they win the tournament.
Yep. So that leads us back to the pairings of today. Besides having those two very interesting games, I think we're also in for a treat in the two other games. We have Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces against Levon Aronian. As we said yesterday, Jan, I still expect a lot from that game. I think both players want to win. They want to finish strong, especially Hikaru is on kind of bit of a comeback streak currently. Likewise, I think Giri is looking to put in his first win. At least I told him to put in that first win, so I'm speaking a little bit from my own perspective here. But I think Anish sees a good target in Veselin Topalov to finish strong and stop and finally put an end to that horrible draw streak of 13 games in a row in this tournament.
Yeah, let's have one more look at the table. And there we see Topalov is actually the only guy with a minus score, which might be unheard of after 13 rounds a tournament at this level. Everyone has 50%, which is 6.5 out of 13 or more, while Topalov has been getting crushed. He's at -5, and frankly, yeah, he hasn't looked like a super grandmaster, at least his last couple games. So Anish has big incentive, I believe, to play the game out today.
Yeah.
And another big question, of course, is when we once again get to the pairings. If I get to them. This can only take hours. Here we go. If Vishy Anand has any incentive to play for a win with black, because as you've mentioned, that could seriously alter the tournament situation, also Fabiano Caruana's strategy, but Vishy can't win the tournament, no matter how it goes. So you could argue, why would he push with black where he's been struggling against the solid Peter Svidler? Does any of them have any motivation to make this a messy game? I'm not so sure.
That's a very good question, Jan. I was raising this yesterday as well. I'm not sure how much of an incentive Vishy has to win this game. Of course, it's still worth a lot to simply be tied for first. It would be a fantastic result on his part, but technically speaking, it does not put him in contention for the World Championship match. So we're going to find out how Vishy is going to play the game today. I'm actually suspecting him to just play the game normally, but not take any extra excessive risks. I don't really see the point for him to risk falling back to 50% either. Therefore, I think we're going to see a solid Vishy Anand, and it also depends a little bit on Peter Svidler, whether he's in a risk-seeking mood today.
Yeah, because for him the same thing applies. If he wins his game, +1, great result, but doesn't really change things that much. And Peter is been very outspoken. He was playing for first place. Had a lot of chances throughout the tournament, but is now out of the race. Would have changed had he won against Caruana yesterday. But every participant is going to have their coulda, shoulda, woulda story. I'm not sure Peter is going to be in the mood to take big risks either. I think we're going to be smarter after the opening. We'll see.
We will find out, yes.
Someone's going for it. And the same question applies for Fabiano. I'm sure he's gone through all these thought processes as well. I believe he has concluded he has to play for a win with Black.
I highly doubt that he's not going to try and take some extra risk in this game. I think the best thing is, whether you play with Black or with White, to have your own faith in your own hands. Don't depend too much on Vichy winning today. And I think Fabiano is going to show up in a very aggressive mood. But of course, he should keep in mind that perhaps a draw could be enough in some cases. So it's a complicated situation for him. But I do expect him to try to go for a long fight and grind Karyakin down on his own merit strength.
We will see very shortly. Let's do a quick round of predictions before we get to the games. What you got? Svidler, Anand.
I'm saying Svidler Anand is going to be a draw. I don't once again think that either of these players has a real incentive to play very sharp, and I think they make a lot of draws among each other in the past. I expect a draw today as well.
I also predict a draw. Giri against Topalov.
I'm going with my boy Anish. After a long time of no wins, today he's going to put in that final win, and he's going to break his horrible streak and actually play a good tournament at the end of it. I was looking this up, Jan. If he wins today, he actually ends up gaining rating from this event. So it would, all in all, not be a poor performance by him. And I'm predicting a white win for Anish.
I agree. Topalov has just looked too bad the last couple days. I'm going with 1-0 as well. Nakamura, Aronian.
I'm going to go with a Nakamura win. I'm kind of jumping on the Nakamura bandwagon ever since I predicted him beating Vichy, then very easily beating Topalov as well. I think he's doing well. I think he's beaten Aronian before. Aronian, not in the best frame of mind right now after dropping a few unnecessary points and not taking full advantage of his chances against, among others, Fabiano Caruana and in his previous game. So I think Nakamura has a very good chance of winning today. I'm going to predict a win for him.
I'll go with a draw, exciting as I am. Karyakin against Caruana, the big one.
As much I would like to see a match between Fabiano and Magnus, I think that's the most exciting pairing. I do think that Karyakin is going to make a draw. I don't see him winning either. But I do think that Fabiano is a slightly stronger player, but I don't think he's going to be able to pull off a win with Black on demand. So a draw in that game, which would lead me to predict that Karyakin is going to qualify for the World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, I also got to go with a draw. It is the most likely outcome. If the player with the white piece at this level needs a draw, more often than not, he does get there. But we will see. I'm very curious about the opening. What's it going to be? Knight or for 1d4? Could be anything.
Absolutely. It's going to be a very important choice for Caruana, the opening.
Let's have a look not only at this beautiful cartoon. Looks like Karyakin brought an arrow to a knife fight. I'm not sure which weapon is more powerful there. Also, he's not really using any of his arrows, right?
Not yet. Just a bluff. Not yet. No, it's just a bluff. But also, as I can see, Fabiano is actually still sharpening his sword over there, right? Like he's not really trying to provoke Karyakin yet.
Isn't that Lawrence Trent's job to sharpen the sword at night?
I would think that Lawrence should be involved doing that, so I'm a bit surprised with this cartoon.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, let's look at their direct score. Lots of draws, only one win for Karyakin, 4 losses, a bit in Fabi's favor, but nothing too big. I think we have the first moves coming in, so let us see what they chose.
Well, Jan, I think the first surprise of the day can already be seen. Fabiano Caruana going for a variant of the Sicilian that, as far as I know, he has barely ever used in his career. It's a line that I played a lot, kind of before I made my final Grandmaster norm. I was a big fan of the classical Sicilian and the Rouser system, but it's something that has not really been back in fashion since I think the early 2000s/90s, when Vladimir Kramnik was playing it quite a bit. But at this point, it's not considered to be totally sound theoretically. Topalov has been experimenting a little bit with it, but not too successfully. So clearly a sign from Caruana that he wants to get a real fighting game today, going for a risky opening.
Absolutely. First, I'm not sure if this is a surprise. In general, the player needs to draw with white. This might sound counterintuitive, but they've been going for sharp, open Sicilians because the theory is normally quite well established, and for black to deviate and create winning chances carries a lot of risk.
Exactly, and let's not forget that Karyakin is a very big expert on the e4, knows all of these Sicilians quite well. So I'm not surprised that he went for d4. Also, for example, the Sveshnikov system doesn't strike me as an opening which black can easily play for a win. So a logical choice by Karyakin, but I do think he is surprised, obviously, by Fabiano's opening choice.
Yeah. Then again, in such a situation, I don't even think you prepare. You just think about, okay, I'm going to play e4, I'm going to play main lines, but you can't predict which line he's going to go for. We predicted a Najdorf close, but no cigar. He went knight c6 instead of a6. Bishop g5 is a critical move here.
Yep.
e6, queen d2, and Fabiano chose a system with a6. I'm not a big specialist. What I do know is that there are some older lines like
f4 here and knight.
f4, knight takes d4, queen takes, queen a5. But white, if he so chooses, can stay very, very solid here. e5 and queen takes e5.
Absolutely, this is not the most exciting system for black to play for a win.
So,
but a6 is the main line of the Rouser system. I'm sort of expecting Karyakin to castle queenside, which I think he has played. Yeah. Bishop to d7 has been played.
They used to play h6 here, but then they stopped doing it. I think mainly because of some lines like this.
Bishop to f4, d5, and queen e3. And this is considered to be quite dangerous for black. This structure is quite good, but black is down in development quite a lot, and white's planning to swing over the queen to g3, and generally manages to create some attacking chances in this variation. So this is a little bit out of fashion, even for those who are still specializing in the Rouser, and bishop to d7 has pretty much taken over in popularity.
Note that black had to play a6 first to stop any knight db5s. And here, white has a choice between f3 and f4, right?
Yeah, and Karyakin has opted for f4. f3 allows slightly slower positions. I've actually played this a lot as black. One of the main lines here is bishop to e7, bishop to e3, and black goes h5 to stop white from expanding on the king side. And it leads to pretty complicated positional battle. So I think that's exactly what Fabiano was aiming for. Hikaru Nakamura has played this a little bit too in the past, but f4 is a little bit more straightforward. Right. When b5 is actually the main line, but I'm very surprised to see what Fabiano has played here. He's played the move h6, and this is actually my pet line. I've played this pretty much for several years. This was my only opening. So h6 is an older move which was popularized a little bit, as far as I know, by John van der Wiel, one of the Dutch grandmasters. Here white has two choices, but only one is really the right move. Bishop takes f6 has been tried, but after queen takes f6, knight to f3, and I believe queen to d8 back is the simplest way to play. Black gets a pretty good position here. It looks a little strange to give up the dark squared bishop, and even though it's playable, I'm not a big fan of. So after h6, I'm expecting to see the move bishop to h4 being played.
Oops, sorry.
And here, black actually has two major choices at his disposal.
Can you go g5?
g5 is the main move, but also there's this move knight takes e4, which is considered to be very tricky. I believe queen e1 is the right move, and after knight f6 back, pretty much forced, I believe, knight to f5. There are some forced lines over here in which white is supposed to be a little bit better, so I'm not expecting to see this appear on the board. It doesn't really suit Caruana's situation, but g5 is actually the start of a very interesting and exciting line. And as I said, I know quite a bit about this one. F takes g5 is the main move.
Is this your time to come clean? Are you Fabiano Caruana's secret second? Have you been working against Anish all these years? Why would he choose your pet line in this decisive?
I'm not quite sure, Jan. I'm very surprised to see this, but it's kind of exciting to come back to this line. I haven't spoken or even looked at it for a long time, but my memory serves me right. Over here, knight to g4. And no, I haven't actually advised Fabiano. I wouldn't have advised this line. I don't think it's very good, frankly.
Okay.
So But one of the major mistakes that White has played, or I faced it numerous times, is to go knight to f3 here.
Which looks very natural, would be my first instinct.
It defends the bishop on h4.
You
but
take an
after
f6, yeah?
Exactly. f6, bishop to f4, e5. And as we can see, actually, White is dropping a piece. He retains a little bit of compensation after just playing something like bishop to c4, but obviously this is not the right direction for White, so I'm not expecting to see this.
Just to illustrate, if this bishop goes here, you just take it. And all of a sudden the queen is gone.
So g5 over here is the main move, but I see it has actually not been played. And I'm not going to stop Jan, because actually this transposes back to one of my recent games as White. I've quite some experience in the Rouser variation. This is my game against Li Chao from the Bundesliga 2015, I think. So really what Black is trying to do here, let's go back one move, is transpose back into the original main line, which happens after b5. And White goes bishop takes f6. In this case, after queen takes f6, I believe e5, and he runs into trouble after something like this, and knight takes b5. Should be no good for Black here. But bishop takes f6, g takes f6 is the move for Black, and here White has several options, but basically this type of structure is considered to be very, very risky positionally speaking. King b1, I believe, is one of the main moves, and here queen b6 or b4 is how Black generally continues. Now, what was Li Chao's idea of playing h6 first and then going for b5? It's actually interesting. He wants to go for the exact same line but have the pawn on h6. And of course the difference is very subtle. I'm not even sure if it's a better version or a worse version. Black should still go g takes f6 over here. I believe the same logic applies here. After e5 it shouldn't be a good position. But there are a few cases in which White can go f5 in the future. And if we put our bishop to e7, the queen could have a bit of a spot on h6 to annoy Black. And as we can see, that's no longer possible. But like I said, I think the difference is very subtle. I ended up playing a pretty bad game against Li Chao and lost this as White. So I can't really say that it's a bad weapon for playing for a win, because it's one of the few games that I lost last year. But still a very interesting opening choice. And I actually think that it makes a lot of sense. This is also the line that Topalov has tried to play against my friend Anish when he was playing for a win. So it's not a total surprise, but still a very rare opening. And Fabiano clearly, up to date with the latest trends. H6 and bishop and then b5 is kind of the latest try here for Black to steer the game into slightly new territory. So not a bad choice in my opinion at all.
No, it's going to come down to how well does Karyakin know this. No one at top level plays this regularly, so it would be strange if he's been checking it recently. But he's been a 1e4 player all his life, so he must have some general knowledge about all this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I do think he's going to go bishop takes f6 here. There might be some other moves, Jan, that will... I'm not even exactly sure. I believe queen to e1 is one of these moves that can be played here.
I was wondering, if I just play a slow move, let's say king b1 or something, what do you want to do? Is this a trick, or do you just want to keep developing? What are you up to?
It's a good question. Well, first of all, b4 and then knight takes e4 strikes me as annoying.
Right. Yeah, this is already a problem.
Yeah. So actually, I think you can just make any move, but queen to e1, of course, would defend the e-pawn. And if I remember correctly, this one is a little bit more solid for White. We're not going to go...
What do I do?
It's a good question.
Because if I go here, this looks unpleasant.
I think actually this is the variation, and here e5, knight to d5. And as we can see, this is already starting to look a little bit less interesting. Some exchanges will follow, like here e takes d6, or even knight e4, I'm not sure. But let's say something like this could maybe serve Karyakin's purpose a little bit better if he's aiming for a draw. Of course, it's always tricky. You shouldn't go completely for a draw, but let's say there's this move queen to e1, which I think is supposed to be a lot more solid, but of course not the right way if you want to play for full advantage here. But I think that's what Sergey must be thinking about right now. Since he's an e4 player, he must be aware of some of the options here for White. And normally he would play bishop takes f6, I'm sure, but he's thinking whether he should switch his game plan a little bit compared to any other game.
We'll see what he does. Caruana certainly went out of his way to play a position in line he's never played before to get a fresh fighting opening. We shall see how it serves him. Where you want to go? We got a couple other games going on. Your boy?
I would say my boy Anish has a position that I do not know too much about. It's a very positional Catalan, but I think you're going to drop some knowledge over here. So
this is my turf. And it is my turf because I've done a video series about all this stuff. From the black point of view, the main move in this position is short castles. But knight c3 is a tricky little move order, which I've always thought was very interesting. I've even recommended it to some people. One big point of this is you can get this position against the Queen's Gambit declined. This is a popular move, no one really knows what to do. And if you go g3 and bishop g2 here, you end up in this same position. So this move order has been used by some people, including Vladimir Kramnik, so it's not a big surprise, but it slightly changes the nature of the play. Black's most principal move is d takes c4 in this position. If black plays slowly with his bishop on e7, let's say c6, castles b6, white normally has some tries to get a small advantage here. Knight d2, e4 is 1, queen d3, b3, white tends to be a little better. So d takes c4 is a principal move, and now white wants to go knight to e5, targeting this pawn immediately. What you're hoping for is to get a small advantage because of this bishop on the long diagonal. Now there is a big body of theory here, but there's a bigger body of theory in the equivalent position after castles dc, knight e5, where here knight c6 is clearly the main move. c5 is possible too, and in my opinion actually a little underrated, but conventional wisdom is that after d takes c5, white is a little better if queen d1, rook d1, and this bishop is very strong. So after knight c3, a lot of these subtleties change a little bit. First of all, knight c6 is a different line than after castles. Here, white can grab this pawn, and even though the differences are very, very small, they are certainly there. In this same position where white is castled, e5 is supposed to be a good move. In this position, c5 is supposed to be a good move, but black struggles a little equalizing here, so it's not a dumb choice. And yeah, I thought this was interesting for white. However, there's two drawbacks to this move order. One is Vladimir Kramnik's choice, which looks ridiculous, but is, as most of Kramnik's opening ideas, pretty smart. Queen d6.
I believe this was played against Svidler in their game.
Knight c4, queen a6 is a game. Svidler Kramnik, where Kramnik equalized. It looks very strange, but now this knight on c3 is a little misplaced. In some ways, you would like to put it here just to defend his colleague. However, I'm sure Anish has looked at this and had some idea. And the other drawback is that now the move c5 is a little stronger than in the position with the knight still on b1 and white having castled. And the point is after dc5, you take on d1, and white doesn't have the very convenient way to recapture with his rook. So you have to take either with the king, which is awkward, or with a knight, which is also not ideal. And after bishop takes c5, black is closer to equality. Still, this is not a new position. People have tried all kinds of moves here. Bishop to e3, knight takes c4. And Anish, as he tends to, plays the most critical move, in my opinion, which is to return with the knight to c3 directly. If you take here, then black sort of manages to develop knight c6, bishop d7, and it's very hard to extract anything serious. Therefore, you wait for a move, knight c3. If black goes here, then you're happily taking, because now it's very hard for black to develop his queenside. And black has to do something. If memory serves me, bishop b4 or bishop d4 were possible moves here, trying to, break this balance very quickly. But it's in a way a typical Anish line. It's topical, but still solid. You're playing for a small advantage. You can analyze this quite deeply, but things can't go too wrong. So yeah, it's a choice to play a long game, get a tiny advantage. If it's gonna be a draw, of course we're gonna make fun of him for this chicken opening. If he wins, we're gonna praise him as a great technician and great psychologist, because Topalov doesn't like slightly worse endgames. So we'll see.
Yeah, not a surprising opening choice if you ask me. I think Anish is kind of by now a little bit famous for finding these slightly annoying lines to face. I'm wondering how much Topalov is up to date when it comes to these kind of sidelines which are a little bit annoying.
He has to be sort of up to date because he's lost this very line to
against
Vladimir Kramnik,
yeah.
Where I believe he played a move like knight bd7 and didn't manage to equalize, was something like this, and he got a bad position.
Yeah, I suppose that he should know a thing or two, but of course the question is, Does he remember the exact details of his analysis? And we're going to find out. But a safe choice by Anish. On the other hand, I must say that if Topalov is going for a solid opening, like the Queen's Gambit, or I'm not sure what he was planning to do, but basically if you're getting a Catalan on the board, it's not like you can create fireworks out of nowhere. So this is also not by any means a super chicken-like opening, but it is a safe choice for white.
No, I've thought that this is one of the most open questions in this position, and actually I've recommended it to people.
Okay.
And I was planning to employ it myself, but once again, Anish comes first. It's not a novelty, obviously, but even when I was doing this series for black, most of the main lines you can more or less, if you know your way around, equalize quite straightforwardly. But this gave me some fits, so I think it's an interesting choice. But of course, it's reasonably little. Knight c3, Topalov played knight c6 immediately, which I can't remember details, but it looks like Anish decided not to take here, but instead took on c4, and now this is not a whole lot. Rook d8, you're intending to go here, then here. It's a tiny advantage for white, it always is, because his bishop is stronger than his counterpart. As a rule of thumb, if black manages to develop this bishop either to d7 or to e5, e6, the worst is over for him. Still, Anish is clearly still blitzing, so it's all part of his homework.
Yep.
We shall find out. Let's go to Svidler against Anand, the two veterans. Topalov is actually a little older than Svidler, not by much. We can see by their head-to-head, Svidler never won a game against Vichy in their long careers, and he's lost in the first lap here. He seems to have decided everyone's crushing Vichy with one c4.
A very logical
Might as well
choice.
join the team.
I think that's a normal choice on Svidler's part. He does probably feel a sense of, just trying to be clever all the way through. And, if one guy shows some weakness in one of the main opening moves, then if you're able to play that move and you have some experience, which Svidler does, he already tried c4 earlier this tournament against Anish, why not go for it as well?
Yeah, actually he's more or less stuck to c4. He's played one e4 once against Topalov. I think the rest of his games were c4, so it has been his main weapon throughout the tournament anyway. And Vichy is a little stubborn, or maybe he's just done all his homework, but he does stick to this line where he's had two painful losses in a row.
Yep.
Let's see what Svidler has up his sleeve. Bishop g2, castles, and maybe Vichy's not that stubborn, because here he deviates from this theory debate he's been having with the rest of the world after e4, knight g5. And he plays a more solid move, a more rare move, the move rook to e8. When I have to admit I'm out of book. To my mind, the most natural move is d3 here.
It looks to me like d3 would probably be answered by something like taking an e4.
Right.
And honestly, I'm not quite sure either. Something like knight d4, knight e5 looks
I think
logical.
this is theory. I think I've seen games here with takes followed by d5.
This looks familiar to me as well.
Aronian, Gelfand, and so some games. White is supposed to be a tiny bit better, but it's another line that is hard to crack. But Svidler played
Very surprising move, actually.
this move. This maneuver is known in all kinds of structures, but to play it deliberately here, I'm not sure. It strikes me as a little odd, because normally you do this after black took on c3. While here, once this knight gets here, black can go bishop c5 or bishop f8, and I'm not sure you've achieved that much. So Vichy went d6, natural move, knight c2, bishop c5. Svidler has to show why his knight is so great here. It's not obvious to me at all.
It seems like a very strange maneuver to me, Jan. Like, white can go for knight a4, for example, sort of chasing the bishop all the way, which might be something that Peter is thinking about right now. But I even played a game once in which I let white take on c5, and I didn't feel that was a big deal at all, especially in this case.
The structure. It looks silly for black, but he has a lot of control over the center.
And a lot of activity too. As soon as you go d3, I could start considering bishop to h3 and e4. It doesn't strike me as something that black has to be very worried about. Of course, a triple pawn is not something you should ever allow completely deliberately, but in this case, black has not really played any strange move, and white has spent a lot of time creating this weakness. Black should have some counterplay in return. So I'm not quite sure what is supposed to happen in this case after bishop to c5. Feels like Vichy has made the most logical moves in reply to knight c2.
Yeah, it looks like, I don't know, I'm not booked up enough here, but it looks like Peter sort of refused to have a theory debate Or maybe he didn't know this move, rook e8, and didn't play. I guess d3 is the main move here. Maybe you could go e4 Anish style, but it looks wrong. So no, I think they go d3, and this knight e1 might be a tricky sideline, but it doesn't feel dangerous, does it?
It doesn't feel dangerous now. It's not a... If you compare this to the previous games Vichy has played, in this variation it looks very harmless. I'm not quite sure what Peter's idea here is. He could, of course, play very slowly and just start developing now d3 and so on. But then the maneuver knight e1, knight c2 still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, interesting. I guess d3 looks like a normal move, and black would probably go h6 here. And I'm not quite sure how white should continue from here onwards.
Well, you can always do something like this, but it all feels very harmless.
a6 or a5.
a6 or a5, no, a3. And even knight d4 should be very possible now that this knight has moved 18 times. Why not exchange it?
For sure.
I don't see any problems, frankly.
Yeah, one of the annoying things about having played the knight to c2 is that if you want to go for e3 at any point, stopping this move, there's always bishop to g4 hitting your queen, and you don't really have a very pleasant way to deal with this because queen d2 looks a little odd, but of course f3 you also don't want to play. So, bit of a mysterious maneuver to me at this point. I'm not quite sure how Peter is going to back up his ideas after bringing the knight to c2, but I guess we'll find out. But looks like today Vichy is not going to get into a lot of trouble on the black side of the English opening.
No, frankly, if you give this position to me, knowing nothing, having never seen it before, I'd be surprised if I got in trouble out of the opening here. Feels like the play is easy. h6, a6, a5, knight d4 whenever you need it, get the bishop out. No, Vichy, I think he can be happy.
Yeah.
Let's look at Nakamura against Mr. Levon Aronian. They've been sort of beating each other up, but Levon got the upper hand overall already. 12 wins compared to 6 losses. Not a lot of draws. Normally between these guys, we've seen it before, there's more draws than decisive games.
Yeah.
Here, there's been quite a lot of bloodshed.
Yeah, I would say so too. I think that's why one of the reasons that I actually predicted a win. I predicted a win on Nakamura's side, but as you mentioned, Levon also has beaten Hikaru numerous times. These guys don't like to make draws. Like you said, they like to really go for it. I think they're both quite sharp players, quite creative in their own way. And today, actually, we see what could very well become quite a fighting opening as well. Levon has been playing the Ragozin that we see over here very frequently. And Hikaru has chosen the queen a4 check line, which is slightly less theoretical than many of the other moves here, I would say.
Yeah, this is the move you play if you're not really in the mood for a theory battle, but you still want a complicated position. Like, for me, if I'm well prepared, I'll go for one of the sharp lines. CD, ED, bishop g5 is the most principled. But if you want a game and you don't really feel like testing your opponent's preparation, you give this check, forcing black to go knight c6, which is not ideal, of course, because black's counterplay very often is based on c5 here. Now you go e3, castles, and here there's many lines. Queen c2 is a move I believe I've played it myself. The point is you've done your job with queen a4 check, forcing this knight to c6, and now you just want to continue development. You don't want to move this bishop too early, because black's typical plan is to take here and then go bishop to d6 to prepare e5. So ideally you don't want to spend 2 moves getting to c4 and say you want to make other useful moves. That's what's happening. Aronian is also waiting for this bishop to move. Rook e8, bishop d2, a6. This is the typical mutual making useful moves before this bishop makes a move. a3, bishop to d6, h3. We can see both sides are really trying to find any move that makes any sense, or not having to move this bishop. h6, rook d1. And now Aronian sort of gives up and says, okay, you know what, I've played all my useful moves, I'm going to have to take on c4 before something bad happens.
Yeah, I remember one of Aronian's latest games in this line actually saw some sort of continuation related to the moves c5 and b4. Obviously, that was not when black already had played a6, when it's a lot less tempting, but he had a game against Bacro, the French player who's also a very strong player, and that went in a slightly different fashion, something like c5 and b4, but in this case it looks like black would be very quick to get his pawn to e5, which is the typical counterpunch in this structure.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can reproduce the move, or I remember in that game, Levon went for some maneuver like this.
Yeah, some very subtle
helped.
ideas came through in that game, but this is a completely different type of structure. I think Hikaru actually likes his position here. I'm not quite sure if he's outsmarted Levon, but normally you're kind of happy with white having forced black to play d takes c4 and being able to recapture on c4 at once. Although in this case, I'm really not sure. Perhaps Levon is going to be able to play e4 over here, and he's happy about that.
Yeah, because black also has been able to make all his useful moves, especially h6 might look a little mysterious, but here after e4, it's very important that there's no knight g5. I'm not sure what you do here. I guess you have to go passive.
Yeah, this is actually not particularly nice looking for white. Bishop to f5 would be a good move if queen b3 doesn't work.
Queen b3, knight a5.
Bishop takes f7 check.
F8.
Queen
a2. Let's put it on the board. Maybe I was a little too excited. Yeah, rook e7, then you
retreat back to
retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So queen b3, but still, this doesn't look like a threat.
No, it doesn't look. I think queen to d7 should be good enough. Yeah. And after queen takes b7, rook b8, my queen gets trapped in all kinds of ways. Rook to b8 or knight to a5. It all looks very bad for black. So he could just play bishop to f5 in that position. And
I was actually wondering after bishop f5 if it's a problem for if white goes f4. I'm not sure if f3 or f4. But normally, if black gets one more move here, I think it's better.
Yeah.
Because you can't really do anything, and you already have to deal with ideas like bishop h3.
Yeah, and also f3 doesn't strike me as a very good move. Your suggestion f4 makes a lot more sense, because here, taking on e4, black can just recapture in most of the cases. And unless there's some tactics working in your favor here, which might be the case, I'm not quite sure. It's getting very sharp after knight takes c3. But normally, if black gets control over the e4 square, it is a good sign here. Knight to e2 check, king f2, and maybe white is in good shape. Bishop to g3 check also, and knight takes d4.
Whoa.
Probably it's black who is...
This is winning for black.
Yeah.
How do we do that to poor Hikaru?
No, on f5, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. This is something that Hikaru is probably not hoping to see happening. But it's an interesting positional struggle, especially after you move f4. I don't think f3 is a very good move. f4 looks like the better idea here.
So this is sort of Nimzowitschian even. Probably you go h5. I'm not sure if g4 is a threat, but just in general. And then you go queen d7, start bringing the knight towards the d5 square.
Yeah,
I think black's fine.
Yeah, white's knight on e1 is very misplaced, so this shouldn't be too bad. Of course, you can consider a move like knight f3. Might look a little crazy, but...
No, it's actually a good move. I just missed it. So the knight gets here, that changes the equation big time.
Yeah, that suddenly turned into a very good position for white.
So I have to be a little more accurate and start with this, probably.
And I should go g4 then.
I don't know. I was hoping to scare you with potential piece sacrifice here, but the knight on g2 blocks everything.
Yeah. Well, it's still pretty interesting. You can go for it and play queen to h3 maybe. I might have a simple defense and I have like bishop to e2, but still worth considering. Queen e2, queen h3, or queen h3 probably.
Yeah, I don't think the players share any of our thoughts for messing up their positions like this, but still there's a lot of room for play. I don't know, you could think about some slow maneuvers.
Yeah, it's no, but there is potential for this position to get out of hand really quickly.
But are we missing something simple? Just the usual disclaimer, we're still unplugged as we like to be at the start of the show to try to make sense of it. But what else can you do? D5 just looks bad. You take and you take here, so this is not it. Knight e5, we just take a pawn, also doesn't work. Knight h4
looks very strange.
Like a no return ticket. Even g5 immediately. Could go here, but I'm not sure what you're doing. So that leaves knight e1 or knight h2. Knight h2 might make some sense because you can jump here on some lines, but also if this knight ever gets attacked, then it's going to be very hard to defend if I could play this.
I do think knight to e1 is the most logical move. I'm not sure about bishop to f5, but
Yeah, that one I'm also not sure. If it works, I think it's good, but I'm not sure if allowing f4 is necessary. Could certainly play, well, lots of moves here. b5 is a move, some knight maneuvers. Bishop e6, d5 is a problem, right? Yeah.
Bishop e6, d5, yes, is kind of a problem. Also, knight to e7, queen to b3 looks a little bit annoying because we can't defend f7. So one way to deal with that could be to play b5 first and then sort of provoke bishop to a2 and then go knight e7. But it feels a little bit strange.
A little loose, yeah. I mean,
Also
you can
the
go for
e4
this
pawn.
setup and put the bishop here,
Yeah.
which sometimes they do. It's risky positionally, but that doesn't matter because the white knights, or if the white knights are nowhere near.
Yeah, the
this
question
square,
is
let's
if
say.
you have a good reaction to move like f3 when you start putting your bishop in a slightly unnatural square, of course.
Yeah. Let's say I take. Okay, that's good. Once again, heat up very quickly. No, it's risky position.
It's a risky position, yeah. It might be good for white.
Still not 100% sold,
B4,
but it comes down to very direct play as usual. Because if this works, black can also be better here very quickly.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. But I actually think that, especially if Hikaru is going to allow e4, which I think if he's ambitious, he's played short castle. Actually, the question is if Levon wants to go for e4.
Yeah,
but
Levon, big thing here. He has this alternative. This is a normal structure. In general, I'm not sure if this is true, but I always thought if you're not in time to get bishop f5 or bishop g4 here, it's a little tricky to play.
yeah, I actually think that this should be a good position for white because I feel that his h3 and a3 are a lot more useful than black's a6 and h6. So those waiting moves are definitely favoring him in
There's
this
also
pawn
the
structure.
problem that, you would like to go here and here, but once again, this move you mentioned, queen b3, is very awkward to meet, and then there's knight e5, so you're not in time to regroup successfully. If bishop e6, there's d5.
I actually don't think that this is really a choice that Levon can make. It's not in line with his previous play. I think he has to go for e4, and we're going to see... Well, I think we're in for a treat, Jan. It's going to be a very exciting position after e4.
Yeah, just one final note on this position. You always have to worry about this move here as well.
Yeah.
G8, queen g6 check, which is a tactic that very often works. So no, this is
a
just
very
bad.
dangerous one.
No, e4 does look like by far the most logical move. You could, if you don't want to commit, think about b5 and bishop b7, but I like this move. We'll see how it goes. Let's go back to the game of the day. No question about it. One of these two guys is going to be the next challenger for world champion Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah.
Do you think it's coincidence that all these names start with Car? Can it be a coincidence at this point?
It can't really be a coincidence, Jan.
I
I'm
agree.
pretty sure that there's basis for some complot theories over there. I've never heard of this before, by the way. Did you just come up with this, or is this a generally known thing?
I'm sure I've done some dumb car jokes earlier, but yeah, I'm thinking about now. There was also Karpov. So maybe this is Anish's big problem. Like if he was called Anish Kari, he'd be crushing everybody. But
Yeah, this is an
I don't
interesting
know.
one. Interesting one.
Russian car versus Italian-American car should normally favor the Italo-American, right? They have Ferrari, Fiat, Lamborghini, Dodge. Well, Russian cars, I'm not
I'm not
aware
quite-
of any
I'm-
famous brands.
I'm not sure at all. I definitely never drove in a Russian car.
Norwegian cars, I also don't think they're that famous for it, but they're very much into technology. So these Tesla cars, like all this socially conscious stuff is very big in Norway.
Yeah, I would expect something to see something like that from Norway. Well, speaking about the position, Jan, I think we've seen a couple of logical moves followed up after h6. I'm glad to see that Karyakin has decided to take on f6. Like I said, I feel like queen e1 was a bit of a bailout there for white. At least if I remember well, it was a more safe reply to this variation. But this is the exciting line, and this is not considered to be a safe opening. A few names come to mind. First of all, there's an expert Croatian grandmaster, if I'm not mistaken, Kozul, who's played this pretty much his entire career. Recently, Richard Rapport was testing this line quite a bit.
Oof, that's a seal of approval.
Yeah, that does not necessarily mean that it's theoretically fully sound, but Richard has been trying this, also not really successfully, in my opinion. So given those names, I think we could definitely deduce that this is a very risky choice once again by Fabiano Caruana.
Yeah, we've seen the structure at top level a bit. Maybe not this exact position, but I recall some Mamedyarov games and so on. In general, it always felt like Black is struggling, right?
Yeah, no. Black occasionally manages to set up a very nice kingside attack here, but the structure in itself is, of course, not very sound in the long run. So very often it comes down to positions in which Black might not be objectively okay, but he manages to counter-attack white on the king side in time.
Kingside or queenside, yeah?
Queen side, I'm sorry. F5, I think, is one of the moves that I always wait for a little bit. Like, it's not a move that I rush to play as white, but it's a normal line. And queen to b6 seems like a pretty standard reply here.
In general, white wants to avoid endgames, right? If you can take twice on d4, then you're fine. Like, even if this bishop is to stay passive for a while, the two bishops and the structure will have their say. So you have to do something. You probably don't want to go here, even though I was going to say e5, but I'm having second thoughts after knight d5. Yeah, this just doesn't work.
Be as bad as it looked initially, yeah. But queen to e3, knight takes d4 doesn't strike me as very good. Because actually now we could
start thinking about going crazy, but even if we play a slow move like this one.
Yeah, or perhaps even b4 followed by e5. Could be the type of ending that you're looking for as white. Knight to d1, then I'm not quite sure if I should still go e5 because you placed your knight quite well for that, but the knight otherwise is not very happy on d1, I think. So a normal move would serve Black's purpose here, I think.
So what's the typical way to play? I've seen people play this move, or you can just move the knight, right?
Knight f3, I think, is the most logical move. There's one thing I wanted to show Jan. In the previous variation, after knight to d1, e5, there's this one maneuver that maybe not everyone's familiar with, but instead of e5 over here, there's this move h5, which can sometimes lead to a very nice maneuver of the bishop to e5. So for example, king b1, bishop h6, queen d3, bishop to f4 would be kind of Black's dream position, I suppose. So here you can see how sometimes Black can get something very nice out of this, but normally the bishop f8 is a bit of a piece to worry about playing this as Black.
Yeah, and the tricky thing is, maybe that's why Caruana chose this line. In order for white to play well here, he has to keep the pieces on the board and put pressure on the black position. If you start exchanging things, you're in danger of being worse. Like, okay, I'm not saying you're worse here. This is actually a reasonable choice, I believe. But in general, white can't try to simplify, because in any endgame, this pawn mess in the center and the black two bishops will ensure he has a good life, and that means winning chances. So white sort of has to do something. But doesn't this make sense anyway? We get rid of one knight, then we try to transfer the other over here.
Yeah, one question is also always whether you can sacrifice the pawn on e4. Sometimes you even see bishop knight takes e6 followed by knight e2. I'm not sure if it works in this case, but at times this just gives white decent compensation. For example, bishop takes e4, knight g3. I'm not quite sure if this is exactly the way you should go about it, but it's not an unfamiliar kind of idea in this position. Yeah, if you go back to b7 or something like that, simply move like bishop to d3, could be. And if Black says, I want to go e5, then you have a nice blockade with bishop to e4.
Well, I'm going to castle. Come on, I got an extra pawn. Go e5, d5, and win.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about this particular case. I was thinking about taking on e6 and queen f4, something in that direction. I think you'll hold it together here. Something like... Actually, bishop to e7, rook e1 still looks like it could be interesting, but maybe you would just
blunder the queen to entertain. Some tricks, but I'd be more than a little surprised if...
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be something that Karyakin wants to do right now. Yeah, that's true.
We'll see what he does. Yeah, to my mind, but I'm not an e4 player. Taking and bishop d3 looks very logical. But there is also this school of thought that you have to keep as many pieces as possible here, right?
Yeah, knight to f3 somehow feels to me like the most logical move. But yeah, knight takes c6 also very normal, and bishop d3 would be a logical follow-up. Actually, perhaps my idea would make a little bit more sense if I would go knight takes c6 and king b1, instead of forcing you to take on e4 For example, now with the king on b1, I might have a claim to slightly better version of what we just saw.
Because now it's also tougher for me to castle because I have these weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm more on board with.
Yeah, for example, now bishop to c4, bishop to d3.
Yeah, no, there's some options.
Some options here. But still, I think that this is actually the type of position that Fabiano should be looking for. So regardless of how good it really is, it's complicated, it's not easy for white to play. And perhaps most important is what you said, Jan, is that you can't really exchange pieces here. It's actually black who has the better endgame. Of course, it's quite typical in the Sicilian, but still, there's pressure on Karyakin, and that's the most important thing for Fabiano at this point in the tournament.
Yeah, he's shown that throughout the tournament that he's not afraid of playing setups we consider risky to put the pressure on the opponent. This is a must-win situation, but even earlier he played the Benoni against Levon Aronian, sort of unprovoked. So Fabi, he's willing to mix it, to play openings he's not familiar with, gets sharp positions. We'll see. We are in for a lot of action, I have a feeling. Not sure what happened here. Castles. Levon did not like our wisdom that he should push e4. Went bishop d7. Perfectly natural developing move.
Yeah, I'm actually not surprised because we were not completely sure how to follow up after e4 for black.
That's true.
So bishop to d7 makes sense. I'm a bit surprised with Hikaru's choice. Not quite sure whether d takes e5 would be the move that comes to my mind first. But of course, at some point, one of the two players has to decide what to do with the central tension going on.
Normally with white, if you want something, you gotta push d5 here at some point or another. I'm not saying this is an advantage. Knight e7, e4. This is quite typical play for this line, and black either goes for b5 and c6 or c6 directly, or he tries to make something happen on the king side, but that's normally not very realistic. If white manages to stabilize the position, let's say rook e1, bishop f1, bishop e3, white tends to be better. So what black wants to do here is open up the queen side and simplify with a well-timed c6. Either immediately b5, c6, or some preparation moves like rook c8. But that's the normal way to approach these things. I'm not sure if this is a great version for white, but as a rule of thumb, I'm sure I've said this before, d5 is nothing unless you have a very quick follow-up with e4, f4.
Well, that might be what Hikaru is thinking about right now, is something like f4, rook to e8 and e4, but it is always a very double-edged thing to go for. Perhaps this is one of the few cases where it actually works.
Well, you always think about this move here as well. This move or rook c5, some weird-looking moves just to make e4 harder. I don't know if it works, but you always have to take this into account. If king h2, then knight g4 check. If king h1, I don't know. You at least gotta calculate this. This might win on the spot, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, rook to h5, I could probably go bishop to e2 in this case.
Yeah, you probably should.
And at least if rook h4, bishop e1, your rook is trapped, so I guess that it's hard to make this work.
Here, rook c5, b4. Not gonna be able to do it. And yeah, so the question is, if you go back, this is the most natural move. Hang on, are we blundering stuff? Can we do this?
Oh, bishop to f5, you're right. That's probably a better way of playing this.
I'm not sure, like positionally this is sound because we're stopping e4. The question of course is
queen to queen to b3, rook e7.
Also
e4 immediately.
No, e4 doesn't seem to work, right? Bishop takes, knight takes, rook takes, and I can't spot a trick, even though it feels a little risky.
There's bishop to d5 maybe. But it's only a pawn. Also bishop to c5 check.
Right? And this.
Yeah. It doesn't. Also, it would be a bit of a weird solution.
Yeah. No, maybe there's nothing direct. So queen b3, rook e7, I would guess. Yeah. If white can't do anything here, he's probably even worse, like b5.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get the square.
No, bishop to f5 is an important resource that you mentioned.
Takes, but takes. This feels very, very shaky.
Yeah.
Even a position where black stays down, opponent takes here, he can be quite active.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's something stronger here. Weird stuff. How do we get here? You can also start with e4.
Yeah, that's a sensible way of going about it.
Yeah, then you gotta take this move into account. At least stopping f4, but this feels a little slow for black somehow. Bishop f4, e5.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that Hikaru is thinking about either playing e4 or f4 though, because otherwise his idea of d takes e5 doesn't really have a logical follow-up.
Great.
e4 seems...
I'm tempted to sacrifice all of Levon's pieces, but I'm not sure there is any foundation to it. Probably not, actually. Nah, it doesn't work, does it?
In this case,
D3.
queen d3, I think, looks like the way.
Yeah.
I was
Not
thinking
quite.
about knight to g4, this type of position, but it also doesn't.
Also, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause it feels like you want to act like incredibly quickly before something happens, but I also can't quite see how to make it work.
No, it looks a little slow. Looks a little slow, yeah. No, actually e4 would mean that black has kind of an important choice to make. Rook to e8 seems like the normal move, but then we actually will play
Yeah,
probably
Same
f4,
position.
and that could very well turn into something black wants to prevent by all means. If white can just go e5 without having any major counterplay as black, of course you're getting into big trouble. But of course check and knight to g4, I'm not quite sure. It does feel quite good for white, I must say.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. It's time for final conclusions, but e4 felt like the principled move here. And yeah, bishop d7. Maybe Hikaru was right. After one passive move, he's now in time to go for this operation.
Yeah. No, I feel like Hikaru came to this game with some ideas. I think he's playing quite fast too. But this bishop to d7 move looks a little weird, Jan. I
Feels a
completely
little off
agree.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on it, but for now it looks like Hikaru might have won the opening battle here after e4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have a clear way to equalize here at the very least. Karyakin, that's my boy, exchanging stuff, but he took on e6 first. That's a bit of a surprise.
Surprised, yeah.
Because positionally you're not supposed to do that. You do this, of course, if you have a direct follow-up, like a check here or something. But it's a strange solution. Bishop takes, what does he want?
Perhaps something like queen to f4, queen to g4?
Perhaps.
See, one thing that I'm never sure about, Jan, is I would always consider playing queen to c5 here.
That's
Queen
what I was
takes
going to
f6
ask. This
and check.
endgame, who's better and why?
I remember when I was playing lines like this quite a bit, I was always happy to get a position such as this one. I think black could very well be in good shape after the following moves that you're indicating. I think this looks actually quite nice for black. I think the missing pawn is not felt too much, and the bishops will compensate for it.
I like it too. Then again, it's a very Karyakin-esque position, right? He's under some positional pressure. He has an extra pawn. He can defend. Maybe he just chose something that's more in his style. That, yeah, I agree. Like, I'm not sure if queen c5 is forced, but it certainly looks like.
Yeah, because if
solid
you
way to
defend
play.
it with bishop to e7, queen g4, it might become a little bit tricky.
I was thinking about going super clumsy. I'm not sure if this makes any sense. My point is here, but it feels wrong, I'll admit.
Yeah.
No, queen c5 looks like a move a classy Sicilian player would play here. And if white goes h4, then black is in time to play something like this.
And perhaps even castle queenside if necessary.
Any other ideas? Knight d5 stuff never really works. Just take it.
Too early for that, and also not too much material left on the board to make it work, I think.
Something like this. Even if we play the dumbest moves, I
King d8
find it
is-
hard to believe there's enough attack here.
Yeah.
Sometimes the computer might surprise you and make something like this work, but I strongly doubt it here.
Yeah. Here, king to c7 even would be quite safe.
No, it seems like this is his idea. But I'm sure Fabi's gonna go for this and
Yeah, I
try to
think-
play that endgame.
Actually, I think that endgame looks like I would rather be on the black side of it normally. I mean, I usually play this type of position as black, but this is not really an approach that I've seen before. Normally, at least, white has put his knight to e2 or has prepared some way of putting pressure on the e6 pawn directly. It's not a very normal thing to take on e6 like this.
No, yeah, I've seen some games here as well. The only way they do this is if there's some very direct follow-up. Knight f4, bishop h5 check. I don't know. But that's, once again, fits with my Karyakin theory. He's shakiest right when he's out of book, when he has to make some strategic decisions there. Sometimes he gets into some trouble. The problem is the game doesn't end there. And then once the situation is clarified, he's amazing again.
Interesting. And actually, Fabiano is thinking about whether he should recapture with the bishop or the queen. It looks like.
Well, this could be very similar if he wants it to be.
Yeah.
Except, well, to my eyes, the bishop looks better here. But maybe he wants to keep it
Yeah, on the other hand, if the
Found
knight
the
ever
e6
comes to d4 after bishop d3, knight e2, kind of the standard maneuver, it might be better to have it on d7 already. But,
Also, here you could think about just playing this, right?
Yeah, I think
Queen
there's
g4 is hitting thin air. And I still want to go here and here.
I actually kind of like the idea of queen takes c6. At least to me, it's very normal. He puts a little bit of thought into whether he should take with the queen rather than the bishop. It's a little bit more solid.
Can I... No, I'm not in time for some goofy ideas, right? Like this.
I
Or
guess.
maybe more to the point, this.
I guess rook to or no, queen to c5 would be my move now.
This anyway. I don't have a check. Bishop f3.
Rook c8, I guess.
c8, yeah. Here. But this looks more natural. Yeah, this seems fine for black.
It's already. I mean, for example, this type of position could go wrong very quickly for white. I think this is kind of the dream position. You want to go h5, king e7, bishop h6, and black is doing very well if he gets enough moves to just develop some of his pieces and get his king in a safe spot.
Fabi did take with the queen. Probably showing some understanding, at least, yeah. I wouldn't have thought of it, but it makes a lot of sense now that you've mentioned this plan, leaving the bishop here. The queen has to go to c5 anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's on b6 or c6.
I'm starting to really like Fabiano's position.
Now, fe6 was just a very strange move. Because, yeah, you can do this, and first of all, you can wait here if he really takes with the queen. Without this, you can always go fe. If he does take with the queen, you can always play your standard plan as well.
Yeah.
And you could argue the queen is a little off here.
And one of the things here, Jan, is that if you go queen c5, queen e5 with the f-pawn still on, somehow there's always... The idea of rook e1 and knight d5 is a lot more threatening to black, I feel.
Yeah, this I've seen, but it always looks tempting at first, but the queen never quite sticks around there. Either this idea or sometimes some weird maneuvers like this, or knight to d4, knight f3.
Yeah. It's a lot trickier with the f-pawn still on. And once again, white can go for fe6 at any point, and black pretty much always has to go f takes e6. So, strange decision by Karyakin over here.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense, frankly, because this or this is never a threat. So it's gonna get exciting. It's Karyakin we're dealing with, so even if Caruana has a small advantage, it doesn't mean a whole lot, but certainly we have the kind of position that is unbalanced, where black is doing fine, which is really all that Fabiano could hope for out of the opening, I would say.
Yep.
What do you want to see?
I would go back to Vichy's game for a second, or perhaps we could have a look at... Yeah, let's have a look at Vichy. Okay, Vichy actually has opted for a plan involving d5, so I'm still a little bit confused about this game. Perhaps Svidler, Peter just wanted to go a3, b4 and claim that with the knight on c2 you can do this very quickly and it might be unpleasant. I'm still a little bit puzzled why Vichy didn't go knight d4, your suggestion over here.
Yeah, I agree. Knight d4 looks by far the most natural, because just for comparison's sake, in this position there is a well-established main line, which is this move here, and now you take. And this is supposed to be quite playable for black, at least it's a well-established line. So after this knight made 2 extra moves, okay, you had to move this bishop once too, but still, at least you win 1 tempo, arguably 1.5. It's hard to believe this is anything. I'm also not 100% sure about a5, like this is this eternal discussion, but...
Yeah, I feel a bit better going a6
actually. As well.
Yeah, especially in combination with knight d4, since our bishop has a bit more of a safe spot on a7. I feel that it might make a little bit more sense. And still, e3, bishop to g4 looks annoying for white.
Yeah, e3 strikes me as always wrong. Yeah, bishop g4 is very, very unpleasant. Well, let's see what they did, because I think it's no problem for black either. Vichy played bishop e6 and d3 is immediately gone d5, which is also quite logical before black gets in either this or b4, b5.
Yeah, and it does make sense with a5 a little bit more because now the bishop actually has a safe spot being able to go back to f8. And you could argue that a5 is a little bit more active in this pawn structure.
Also as a rule of thumb, which might be useless, but if white goes for this knight e1, knight c2 plan in comparable lines and black is in time to go bishop e6, d5, normally means the plan has failed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So Peter's opening play, yeah, knight e1 is just a very, very strange idea. It might have been preparation. It feels to me more like he was surprised by rook e8 and was improvising. I don't like it. Not saying he's worse, but Vichy has zero problems.
Vichy has basically a good version of some of the games that we've seen. Yesterday we had the game Aronian against Karyakin, which saw basically the normal knight f6 and d5 against the English.
Yeah,
and
there black is forced to play knight b6.
Exactly. Over here, this looks like a very good version for black to me.
It's like 4 tempi up.
Yeah.
Which, once again, white is solid. And if you turn the board around and black was black playing Sicilian, you would say, okay, white has chosen sort of toothless setup with rook e8, bishop c5, short castles. But from the black point of view, this position looks nice.
Very good. Well, I must say, Jan, that at the start of this round, I was very worried for Fabi, but it looks like the opening stage has gone well for him in every single way. I think he has a very promising position as black, at least the type of position he should be aiming for. And Vichy has a very good opening position as black that he could very well get a small advantage out of. So for the moment, it's far from decided, and both games are still, very unclear.
Absolutely, and what you're getting at is, should Vichy win his game, then a draw is enough for Fabiano, which is, of course, very important. So he's going to be watching this game quite carefully as well. Then again, it's still a long way for Vichy to go. We've mentioned he doesn't have that much incentive to push that hard for a win. And often, I'm not sure if this is fair to him, but often he's not the type to pursue like tiny advantages, and if there's not that much to do, especially with the black pieces.
Yeah, with white he tends to squeeze as much out of it as possible, but with black he's sometimes a little bit easily satisfied with a draw. But of course, still I think, once again, if he has a chance to share first place, whether he's qualifying for the match or not, I think for himself it's just a very impressive result. And for anyone else, I mean, if you would have told me Vichy was gonna share first place before this tournament, I would have not believed you. So I still think that at least for Vichy himself is always a reason to get the most out of this game.
Yeah, never write off the tiger from Chennai. Let's see what Anish has been up to. Not much.
Not much. This has gone into a position that kind of something that we predicted, I guess. The dark squared bishops have been exchanged, and white is claiming kind of that. I always have the feeling it's a bit of a symbolic advantage in these positions, but it could sometimes turn into something a little unpleasant.
Black has to be precise,
Yeah.
but yeah, if black is normally, it's not that bad. Rook b8 is interesting. I'm always concerned about this structure, but here it looks like white is not quite in time. If you go knight c4, there's bishop a6.
Yeah, and b3, knight to
b3,
d5 also.
I thought this, yeah. And somehow, yeah. White has to make some clumsy moves, and if he has to do that, whatever, like some move like that. Black is always in time to equalize by pushing c5, c4, whatever.
Yeah.
So he went f4, which is, once again, a typical move in these structures. You want to put your king on f2, make e5 a little harder to get in. And Topalov, true to his style, pushed in the center immediately. Yeah. As you mentioned, I don't think such a thing is that bad, but white keeps
Some
playing.
small pressure, yeah. So e5.
What if we take now?
That's the first question that you should ask.
I'm
he
not
takes
sure if e4 is
f4.
legal.
Knight to d5 looks very
Yeah,
strong.
exactly, because it's like a little fork, right?
I'm not sure, Jan. Maybe, yeah, this is definitely not good for black, but I saw a funny line here. E takes f4, knight to d5. If knight takes d5, you go
Just
bishop takes
takes,
d5. Yeah, then actually it looks like it's simply not good for black.
No. So he has to take here. And yeah, once again, first question is what happens if we grab this pawn?
Knight to g4 looks like a logical way to deal with this.
Yeah, knight g4, knight d5. I'm not sure, but this, say I take,
Takes
and whatever, b3.
I think I can just regain the pawn with rook to e8.
Okay, but Is this the end of the story? Maybe it is.
Yeah, I think that white also has a bit of a weakness on e2. Shouldn't be too big of a deal.
Yeah. Guess I have to agree. Like, okay, we could make random moves here, but it feels equalish.
Feels equal, yeah. Yeah, so I'm not sure maybe taking black is, especially with this move rook b8, it looks like it's kind of coming in useful here. So probably Vesselin planned for this. I wonder if the move f5 is something you should consider as white in these types of positions.
Double edge, I'm not sure.
Knight to d4 and I have to go g4 maybe?
This feels like pushing it, even knight takes. I'd be tempted.
Yeah, knight takes. Actually, I'm not sure. I do remain a little bit of material up here, technically speaking.
Yeah, this could go wrong for black as well.
C5,
Knight 5. Rook d2, bishop d5.
Knight to c4 also.
Yeah, that keeps everything. Yeah, that might have been overdoing it. I still don't trust this.
It's not really in the style of what white normally does, but it feels. At least I'm trying to restrict black as much as possible, but it doesn't feel completely correct. Might be some tactical issues here.
Yeah, some g6, h5 I'm trying to make work. But even if I don't know. It feels shady, but I can't refute it. That's how I think about chess in general. But okay, there's also no threat. Anish can play a move like king f2 or short castle, so
king f2 looks very sensible, for example. Yeah. No, I still think that white could hope for a slight edge here, but
it's pretending.
Yeah, it's so far. I also don't think that Topalov has played reasonably logical moves, so no direct judgment for this. I think it's still can go any direction. I'm really interested to see what has happened in the game of Hikaru Nakamura. Some of the lines that we were discussing have actually appeared over here.
F4. We unplugged us, but still smart us. Concluded that E4 was smarter in order to prepare F4, because after F4 this move looked annoying, and that's exactly what happened. So unless there's some killer tactic here, it's a very strange choice by Hikaru. Is there a killer tactic? I still don't see it. We were looking at this and we kind of said, okay, this feels like good compensation, but might still have to prove it, yeah?
I feel rook to b8, rook takes b2 is probably the most logical sequence. It just feels like black is active, very, very active, but okay, white's still a pawn up.
Now let's mess around.
This move. I'm tempted to go for something like bishop to c5 if it works. I might just run into bishop to c3.
I have no clue yet. I was planning bishop b4 or bishop c3 because of this.
Yeah, maybe this is was not the best play on my part. Yeah, let's go back a move. Knight to e4, is that an option?
Yeah. Go here. I don't know, I'm sure I'm blundering pieces left and right. I'm just saying, okay, we're pawn up, and if you have nothing direct, like, I can also be winning in a couple moves. So.
No, actually, after the move f4, I don't think we came up with a better way for white to go about it than this. So clearly Hikaru probably wants to go for this. Still don't really see what... e4 somehow strikes me as the move that's supposed to be the idea behind it, but I can't back it up, or at least it's hard to...
You could go here now as well, but this just seems to work for black, right? Yeah, this can be good. So now this has to be the idea. Rook e7 looks like the most logical move in the world. There's no alternatives here. Nah. And takes. Now black needs to do something smart. I have a feeling we're missing some mate in 2 or like some trapping the queen in 2, but I can't.
I don't think so, Jan. I don't think so.
Maybe not, yeah. some bishop c2 and c5, but the queen can always go back here. I'll cheat for a second. That's how
I think we were on track with our evaluations here. I'm expecting this to happen, and looks like a little bit of pressure on Aronian, but at the same time, I sort of like Black's position after rook to b8, rook takes b2. It requires very precise play after this, but it feels very active and also some attacking chances here for Black.
Yeah, it's very move-by-move stuff, which both these guys, I think, are quite comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like, they're both calculators. Levon likes the initiative. Kara likes to calculate his way out of situations as well.
Yeah.
Objectively, yeah, I'm not sure. White needs to come up with something. So is Black. Knight b5, my brilliant idea. Actually, we were making sensible moves. Now I switched on the computer, but yeah, it says White is a little better, but nothing direct. Some compensation. Queen e8, not the first move that comes to mind.
No.
Probably very clever as usual, but...
Yeah, no, this remains to be seen. I still don't like Hikaru's choice of f4. I felt that after e4, Black is actually in more trouble. But, okay, also this, of course, leads to very complicated play.
It's very much in his style. If you can do something very direct and he doesn't see a refutation, he's going to go for it, even passing up some longer-term pressure. What else we got? We got some moves here in our game of the day where you were rightly very critical of fe6. h5 has been played by Fabiano, hoping to win the queen in one move. Unlikely, but you can always try. And joking aside, of course, a natural idea in these structures, just to bring the bishop out. King b1, b4. Why do you push this knight away? Why not like queen c5?
It's a good question, Jan. The one thing is that I think he wants to bring his bishop to h6 one way or another, but right now queen f2 would be an annoying move because there's no really convenient way to defend f6. King to e7 could be a move, but he might be a bit reluctant to do that.
And with a knight here, yeah, you're worried about rook e1, knight e5.
But my impression of this position is that there are several good ways for Black to continue about it. He went for b4 and queen c5. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about this either. But again, perhaps queen to f4, you could now react by just offering an exchange of the queens. And he wants to go bishop to h6 when White would have to be forced to play queen e1, which is not very convenient for him.
No, I get all that. I'm just, curious why not start with this. Because it doesn't seem like there's any direct knight e5s, and I can still do all the same things. I'm covering the f2 square.
What about e5? Is that
maybe that is a reason. That could very well be. Could also not work. Who knows?
I have check and queen d6. So I think you have to go f takes or queen takes, but f takes already bishop g6.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm sold already. Yeah, bishop g6, knight e4. Okay, that is the reason. So b4. Knight e2, queen c5, now e5, This knight is just passive here, so you can probably do anything.
Yeah, you can take with the pawn and it should be fine. With the f-pawn, obviously.
Yeah. Not with this one, because here, this is checkmate next move. People have been asking me for some self-mates. I will always deliver on those. Don't you worry. By fe5.
Yeah.
This knight is dominated, and even if the king has to go here, I'm not buying it.
No, us Sicilian players, we like running around with our kings. You should ask Luke about this next time he's here. Luke is a big king runner. Like, he doesn't always escape, as you probably know, but our friend Luke van Wely is very familiar with king runs in the Sicilian.
No, actually, I'm talking to Luke about doing a video series called My Biggest Sicilian Disasters, because I love a series where he gets checkmated by Vichy, then by Topalov, then by Leko, then by Kasparov. And so on and so forth.
By some guys in the US Opens as well. But all that being said, Luke has played some fantastic games on the black side of the Sicilian too. We just like to make fun of him. And that king maneuver made me think about Luke for a second.
Yeah, but he's also beaten every single player in this field, which I find quite impressive. He's won a lot of games, Lukey boy.
Yeah.
Did you beat any of these guys?
That's a very impressive statistic. Let me think for a second. I don't think so. I've played with Anish, but no, I actually haven't even played too many of them. I feel like most of these players already for quite a while are mostly just playing in the elite tournaments. So no, I haven't beaten any of them.
Sorry, man.
How about you?
I have a 100% score against Nakamura, 1 out of 1.
Okay.
And I beat Fabi when he was slightly younger than me.
Okay.
Still slightly younger than me. But I beat him when he was 15. Was still an achievement for me, because he was 2600, I was 26 something. So I was happy about that one, but he's beaten me twice since he grew up. And else, yeah, bunch of draws, but I believe that's my only victories.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I can't say the same. I have some success against some of the seconds of these players, but that's about all that I have on my list.
Fair enough. I'm not the type to break, as you know. I look up the game Nakamura Gustafsson. Have you ever managed? 0-1, 22 moves. It's quite brutal.
One thing I am good at, Jan, is predicting what Anish wants to play, because he actually went for my moves F5
Wow.
and G4. And yeah, I felt that this could be an opportunity for White to gain a little bit of a momentum. But of course, I'm still not sure about the practical worth of it. But the line that we were showing with knight takes G4 does seem a little better for White, which means it's hard to find a direct refutation of this play.
Yeah, and if White in a dream world, let's say, manages to castle, go G5, put a knight on D5,
Yeah.
and the other knight on E4, something like that, you could see him taking control. The battle is for these squares. So Anish, yeah, in his style, putting some pressure on Topalov. And this is probably as good a moment as any to bring up our very exciting promotion. If you become a Chess24 premium member, you do get access to literally thousands of videos. Robin van Kampen has done some of the best opening theory series I've seen on the King's Indian and the Taimanov. There's also lesser names like Peter Svidler, Vishy Anand, and so on and so forth, contributing material. A lot of other perks, access to the tactics trainer, the opportunity to play as in Banter Blitz. That is probably the greatest thing of them all.
The opportunity to play you in Banter Blitz, to be more precise, is something that you don't want to miss out on. However, your chance of getting 3 months extra access to Chess24 could very well be in big danger because, Jan,
That's the promo. If you sign up before Anish Giri wins a classical game of chess, you don't get 12 months, you get 15 months. We're gonna add 3 months to your account if you let us know that you're participating in that promo. But we have to end it once Anish wins a game of chess. We're started by the Spanish guys who had a lot of confidence in Anish and they wanted to jump on this bandwagon. Everybody's making jokes about Anish and all his draws. So we thought we'd start this promo. It's gonna make him win a game because it's gonna annoy him. But so far he hasn't. He's made 13 draws, so you still have a chance today. He's playing White against Topalov, who's on -5, so it might be over soon.
I can actually confirm, Jan, that I've informed Anish yesterday about our promo action,
Sure you have.
and I really have been pushing him to put something to show his very best today in this game. So Anish knows about the action. Anish probably doesn't want it to be running for forever. So I think F5 and G4, what he just did, is actually showing his intentions. He's trying to get some play going here for White, and I think it's quite an opportunistic way to play here because you gain a lot of space, but of course you're a little bit exposed both on the king side and also not fully developed yet. So interesting choice by Anish over here.
Yeah, agreed. Let's do a brief little tour through the games and then go on our very exciting first break. Peter Svidler against Vishy. Peter played 93, interesting move after knight takes, bishop takes. He's probably quite happy with his pieces, making a lot of sense. This pawn is hard to attack. So Vishy played it safe, went knight c7. Peter exchanged one pair of knights, went knight c4. And now this is starting to look a lot more like a normal Sicilianish structure. I quite like what Peter's done here, I have to say.
I must say that I find it odd that Vishy has played bishop to d6 here, is that correct?
Yeah, which is a slightly strange move, right? I'm not
actually,
sure.
yeah,
F6,
F6 would be
maybe
the-
this bothered him.
Yeah, but then bishop to f8, for example. This looks like...
Take.
my pawn is hanging, you're right.
Maybe you can go a4, I'm not sure.
A4 would then be my first intuitive call. But bishop to d6 looks a little strange to me.
Yeah, because you're not forced to take immediately, but it's nice to have that option to, at any point, claim the two bishops.
Yeah, and also the
not
bishop
sure.
is just not particularly active on d6 otherwise. Kind of suddenly start liking Peter's position somewhat. Of course, black is very solid. He can go a4, c6, those kind of moves. But Yeah, I don't think Vichy has got the very maximum out of this. I felt that he could be a bit better, and now it's definitely either equal or White has a slight advantage over here, I believe.
I agree. We have this exciting position in Nakamura, Aronian, and bishop c2. Move we've briefly mentioned, but no, I haven't really studied yet, is on the board. Rook c1, probably the same idea, but you've eliminated this option, and this bishop could be hanging in
Yeah.
quite a few lines.
Bishop takes f4 looks like a direct threat even. So, yeah, interesting choice. It's becoming very move by move play already here, very concrete. But some fireworks already starting to appear in the Nakamura Aronian game.
Not surprising it's this game that's heating up. Those two really like to go after each other too. It's always weird games between them. And in our game of the day, Karyakin, Caruana. Rook hf1 is on the board. Decision time. Do you play a risky move? Less risky move? Here first.
I
So
feel
here.
that some of these moves, like Queen G5 right now, I can't do unfortunately because B4 would be hanging, and I think that's overextending a little bit. But Bishop to H6 would be my guess. What I actually don't like is that normally I like to put my king to E7 in these structures, so Queen E1, King E7, but I'm not sure how to react to Knight F4 over here. Perhaps I could just swing.
Something you can take, right? But
Yeah, I prefer not to. I could consider just swinging a rook over to G8, and maybe that's what Fabiano is thinking about right now.
consider stuff like this.
Yeah, there's some tricks here that I have to be careful about. Yeah, definitely, it's not like black is without risk in these types of positions. So Fabiano has to find the right coordination in order to get his king into the best possible place here. I think it's very important whether you want to bring your king to E7 or keep it on E8. Sometimes bring it to the queen side, but that's black's biggest worry over here, together with the pressure on the F6 pawn.
Yeah, just getting a computer opinion here. Computer is quite happy for white. Computer is, of course, a direct player. But yeah, he likes white's position and is not that concerned about black's long-term chances.
Yeah. No, the computer strikes me as always disliking black's position here,
Right.
but I'm not that cynical of black's chances. I still think that even this position, if you take on F4, this should be totally fine for black. Just don't think it's particularly what you would like to do in Fabiano's position, but I still prefer black over here for sure.
Still very double-edged. Yeah. You go A5 and
Yeah,
even endgames are not a draw yet.
I always like to play with all those central pawns and a nice queen on E5 compared to yeah, I mean, it's probably equal, but once again, I'm a Sicilian player. I wouldn't mind playing this at all.
Fair enough. We'll see how it goes. This is, of course, the big game of the day, determining the challenger of Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match. Thank you guys for watching. We will be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back, boys and girls, to our very exciting last round show of the candidates. One game left for everybody, but one game that really matters when it comes to determining the challenger of Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match. Who you got?
I still have my hopes on Fabi. I think he played a great opening today. I think it's a very good choice on his part. I like his position, Jan. I've already sort of expressed this before, but I think that Black is doing very well in his position. Earlier on, Karyakin made a bit of an odd choice, taking on e6 very early without being forced to do so. For the moment, the position seems to be around equal, but I do like Black's prospects. I think it's always a little easier for Black to play with all these central pawns and potentially a nice queen on e5. I think that still Fabiano has everything in his own hands at this point.
Yeah, what I also like about it is he's put the onus on white to play dynamically. Like if this game proceeds quote-unquote normally, both sides make normal moves, then Black will be better long-term. So it's Karyakin who has to come up with dynamic ideas, which is not what you want to do if you're in a draw is fine sort of situation. So,
and I think Fabiano has just showed, another time to me, like he just played this move a5, which I did not really think about when we were looking at this position before. And he shows that he understands his position really well, because now that I look at it, rook takes f6 doesn't strike me as a very good move. Black will probably go bishop to g7 and queen e5. And it might be very dangerous for white when suddenly the black pieces start focusing on the king side, and forcing c3, after which something like rook to b8 starts to really build up the pressure on the white king, looks very promising for white once again. And I don't think that being one pawn down is too big of a deal in these positions, as long as you maintain some influence in the center with your pawns on d6 and e6.
Yeah, because the extra pawn white has really is the h2, g2 against h5, which at least for now is not a factor. So Fabi is asking questions. And Karyakin, it's not an easy choice. I'd still be tempted to play a move like this, but yeah, we've talked about this earlier. You can always take and go queen e5 if you can't see anything better.
And I think that is most likely to happen, because knight g6 looks a little annoying. I'm not sure if black has a move actually instead of taking on f4, but still, bishop takes f4, rook takes f4, queen e5 or king e7 first. I'm not sure, maybe king e7. Keeping the option of queen g, well, actually it doesn't really matter. Queen g5 might be there, but it's not necessary. Still like black a little bit more here. I think black has ideas with a4, a3 in the long run. I could still create some chances against the white king, but objectively probably the position is around equal.
What's your prediction right now? Who's gonna be Magnus's challenger?
I think the trend is going towards Fabiano's favor. I'm going to put my money on, well, not actually my money, but I'm going to put more pressure on Fabiano and say that I think he is very likely going to win this game.
I don't know. I'm still with Karyakin because Karyakin is such a good defender. You have to beat him 5 times.
Sure.
But I am pretty sure you're right that the trend is in Fabiano's favor. He's probably getting a heart attack at home now, the Lawrence Trent that is, rooting for Fabi.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Lawrence, that is Fabiano's manager. For the moment, I have a lot of faith in the kid, and I think that he's done everything well so far, and it's still a very exciting round. We have some other really interesting games that are lighting up a little bit. Most likely, the game of Hikaru and Levon is going to see some sort of tactical sequence right now. I think quite a bit has happened since the last time we dropped by that game. We saw bishop to c2 happen the last time we checked in. Which
Why
is
did they play so quickly? Okay, rook c1, rook b8, this sequence, yeah, it's more or less forced. Queen a6, rook b2. And yeah, black's hopes for counterplay are based on this loose bishop, this slightly far away queen. And also long term, f4 of course is not an ideal move to have here. e3 is always weak, the e4 square is weak. Having said all this, pawn is a pawn, so Levon has to do something. Knight to d1 was played. Interesting move. You don't want to take it because then white consolidates and gets the 2 bishops. So this is fairly logical as well. And queen a5, keeping an eye on the queen. Hikaru, I believe he's enjoying these kinds of positions where it's all very move by move, barely defending stuff, but based on calculations solely.
No, I think Hikaru excels at this type of play. I personally never enjoy this kind of stuff too much. I feel that I'm not really in control of what's happening, but if you find your way around these chaotic type of positions, of course, that means that you're probably gonna get a very good position out of it. And Hikaru is comfortable. He's playing fast, and like we said from the start, I think both players were aiming for something like this. So no real surprises here so far, but I'm not sure what's happening in the position.
Interesting move. If takes, he just wants to recapture. Bold prediction, putting pressure on this pawn. It still looks like black has enough compensation, at least for a pawn, with his knight jumping in here. Very awkward for white to play. Therefore, he played knight f2.
Okay. I still feel that it's more it's harder for black right now to prove the compensation. I mean, especially after knight f2 covering e4, which is probably the most important square in the position right now, I feel that white is at least not in great danger. I don't know if he's much better, but it seems to be okay for Hikaru. And well, Levon is probably gonna have to play with the pawn down for a couple of moves. I don't see a way for him to win that pawn back anytime soon.
Doesn't look like he's played queen b8. Deep move. Maybe he just wants to put his queen here and hope for the best. Hard to say. It
Very
feels
hard to
like
say.
black has enough compensation, but probably barely enough.
Yeah.
I like queen b8 because it stops bishop b4. I'm not sure this was a threat, but if I was white, I'd be constantly thinking about bishop b4, just simplifying, getting rid of this bad bishop. And now you're not going to be able to do it because the b4 square is covered.
Yeah. No, I don't really have a clear prediction about this position or this game yet, but I feel that it could go either way. I do kind of like Hikaru's prospects. I think he's risking a little less over here, but Levon is playing very decent chess so far and has enough compensation, as you said. So both players probably not completely dissatisfied with the outcome of the opening and this middle game that has arose.
It's typical the better one wins situation, like it comes down to calculating, understanding kind of chess I despise. Like I want the worst one wins, or I know everything so I don't have to think. Hard to find these worst player wins situations. What's going on with Anish? Is he gonna be able to grind water out of, I was gonna say the rock that is vesseling Topalov, but Topalov hasn't really been a rock in this tournament, if we're honest.
Let's go back a couple of moves, Jan. We were looking at g4. I was suggesting this idea with f5, which he played in the end. And I was kind of excited about having all these ideas with f5 and knight d5 and so on. Vesselin played very sober chess here. Just went b6, bishop to b7, which honestly makes a whole lot of sense to me. One of the drawbacks of going g5, I realize now, is knight h5, knight f4, which is not normally the type of thing that black's able to do, but since my knight is kind of stuck on e3, g5 is not very tempting. Maybe this was all not as clever and as exciting as I thought it was. Anish went rook to c1, I think, bishop to b7, and the bishops were exchanged. And actually, I must say that after changing that piece, which was potentially black's weakest piece, and in general the problematic piece in the Catalan, black is looking very solid, and I'm not sure that too much is going on here. I would like to see something with g5, but once again, knight to h5 looks like a normal way to counter this, and then the knight comes to f4. Could still become sharp, but it doesn't strike me as the most exciting position anymore. Maybe the idea with f5 was not as strong as Anish and I both thought it would be, and there was a more interesting choice at that point. Over here, it looks like Topalov has managed to equalize, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And in a way, Topalov, maybe Anish got a bit unlucky that he forced Topalov to play sober chess, like b6, bishop b7 is very natural stuff. Well, at least in this tournament, if you've given him options to make it exciting, he's erred quite a bit. But this one, yeah, so far it looks like Topalov wants to play sensible chess last round, not to make his tournament any worse.
Yeah.
Get a draw, go home and regroup. And Anish, yeah, he's going for, well, he's not going for the 14 in a row, but he's in danger of
He's on the course of going there, yeah.
getting there.
All right, let's move back to Vichy for a second. I honestly, Jan, I'm a bit disappointed with the way Vichy's been playing. Moving back, even before here, like knight to e3, I think black has a bunch of good moves over here, and knight e7 is not any. This move would never really pop into my mind. I just don't see why you'd have to play this way. You could put your knight to b6 when you get some sort of a version of the normal line that we were discussing before, and I want to play a4 on the next move. Looks like a very healthy position for black in which you can, very much outplay your opponent. Even other moves, just removing the knight, seem very sensible. Knight to f6 is another move. Maybe not the best place for the knight. I do prefer b6, but knight e7 just strikes me as kind of a... It's not a bad move per se, but it's killing the play somewhat. I think this position was asking for a slightly more interesting approach.
Yeah, Svidler reacted very logical with this stuff. We've seen this here. f6 looks more normal than bishop d6. Somehow.
And again, bishop to d6 I also really dislike. I think f6, bishop f8, and again, the position is interesting. But bishop d6 looks really quite passive.
Yeah, Svidler decided to change the structure here, which is also very logical, given the chance he went d4, black has to take, and now he grabbed the bishop. Because if you take here, this bishop stays alive and probably becomes active. So you gotta take first, and now you got the two bishops, which I'm a fan of. I'm not claiming it's anything special, but only white can be better here, which, given his earlier play,
it's
is
surprising.
an achievement.
Yeah, surprising. Vichy's gone queen e7. This looks like a kind of a clever move to me. Yeah, he's banking on this bishop takes d5, rook d8, and here probably he's thinking he's doing all right.
Maybe you could take the other rook, actually, because here I'm not sure if this is serious, but white can grab a pawn.
Yeah, that sounds smart.
Maybe you can go for this, just to keep a5 covered. And here, I think it's not enough material. Like, sometimes you can make a case for something like this being good for white, but probably not with these light squares and so little material left on the board.
Yeah, I agree. But bishop takes d5 is, of course, not forced, so... I'm not expecting to see that move.
Just develop.
Yeah, bishop to d2 looks logical. And of course, white is dreaming of one day maybe getting e4 and f4 in under good circumstances and expanding, but he's very long, far away from doing so. But for the moment, I mean, I would be rather satisfied in Svidler's case, because I don't think the way he handled the opening was very good, and it seems like he's got at least a slight advantage out of it, without any real danger lurking either. So not expecting anything else than a draw here, but looks a little bit better for Svidler at this point.
Yeah. The one thing is Vichy, I believe he's an amazing defender, especially with bishop knight against two bishops. Historically, oftentimes he's made this look like just a draw, like this material distribution. Well, if you end up with bishop knight against two bishops in the hands of a strong player, you can see how difficult this is. I've always been impressed with his ability here, but from where he's coming from, he can't be very happy.
Well, one of the most impressive things about that playing against the bishops to me was also the match against Gelfand, where he was playing slightly worse positions with mostly bishop knight, but sometimes he would come from two bishops versus bishop knight, and all the time he had slightly unpleasant positions. He was holding them as if nothing really special was going on. So you're right saying that he's probably not too uncomfortable over here. It's in Vichy's style to hold this type of position. And I do expect him to not get into too much trouble.
Also, one thing that has to be said, even though I wasn't impressed at all with Svidler's opening play, especially his 91, gotta give him credit for actually trying, because he's trying to win this last game, which both players, they can't enter the fight for first place. And I wouldn't have been surprised, honestly, at all if Svidler went for, whatever, one of the solid lines of the Berlin, and they make 30 moves and shake hands. But he's fighting, which is good to see. Of course, there's always financial and rating motivations, but in general, after this tremendous fight everybody's been through, 13 rounds, Svidler especially played, I don't know, a combined 15 hours the last two games, that he got up for this game, and he's trying to make it a game. I'm happy for him.
I respect the Svidler for making it as exciting as possible, going for c4, not too theoretical, and just trying to play chess. For the moment, he's not looking like he's going for simplifications or trying to simplify. So yeah, I do like Svidler's effort so far, for sure.
No, obviously, still very likely to end in a draw, but he is hanging in there. And I'm being informed that he gave me a shout out in yesterday's press conference, which is always appreciated, because I have this little project of bringing the expression "stakes is high" back. That's a classic hip hop quote, but whenever I say "stakes is high" on this show, people are telling me it's actually "stakes are high," because people don't know their old school hip hop. So Svidler joined that cause.
Okay, so is it spelled IZ or is it normal spelling, or
No,
it doesn't
it's
even
normal
matter?
spelling. Stakes is high. De La
Okay.
Soul. It's a classic.
Okay. Well, I will try to incorporate it into my repertoire
Please
for sure.
do.
Yeah.
You know that stakes is high. And it applies. Stakes is high. Last round, the winner of the car game qualifies for a match against the world champion.
I have a question, Jan, before we move on to the very exciting game of Caruana against Karyakin. When Peter mentions you in his interviews, does he generally mention you in a positive context? Because I know that you get talked about by the top players once in a while, but
All
whenever
the
they speak about me, it's usually Anish saying that today I've played a bad line and my friend Robin told me about it. Do you also struggle with these kind of problems, or do you feel that you're getting a little bit more respect from these guys?
No, I don't get any respect, and I don't think I deserve much. Peter, however, is a very polite guy, so I don't think he would throw me under the bus
Okay.
in public. With Anish, okay, he hasn't trash talked me much, but in general, I think it's a sign of affection. Whenever he trash talks me, it's like,
Yeah.
he sort of respects them. And it's what everybody does on this show, right? We make fun of people, but normally it's from a place of,
Yeah, it's a very good
I'm not
place.
going to say love and affection, that'd be a bit strong, but a
Yeah.
place of respect. Else,
Surely.
why would you do it? Okay, I can think of some reason. Not here. H6, H4, G5. Maybe Topalov is trying to make it a little exciting here. Because now it takes G5, and all of a sudden your pawns are a little broken. I have a nice little square here. I might get checkmated.
It might get a little bit more interesting now. Also, the F files opening up, which might not be the best situation for white, but there's definitely some knight jumps here that could potentially cost you material. I'm not quite sure what's happening over here. Whether I should run with my king to e3 or just put it back on e1, but surely looks interesting. Also, after g5, my first intention would always be
HG.
HG, and actually, can I go rook h6 and rook takes f6, and does that hurt black in any way? Probably doesn't, but it does seem like an interesting way to play whenever some opportunity like this arises. Maybe I could even argue for playing f6 and just trying to... Now I would like to get a knight to e7 or something like that.
Understood, but
Don't see it quite happening. Rook to h1 followed by rook h5 though. Is that an idea?
I'm tempted to self-mate, as I tend to be, because here serious troubles
Alright.
on the horizon. It's not a very far away horizon. I don't know, it's interesting. Because these knights, they control a lot of squares. So the rooks right now, they don't have a lot of scope. Let's say you go here, here. I still can't hurt you.
No. And
Not sure.
if I win g5, then my attack is really gonna take off. At least I hope so. Rook takes g5, rook g7, and maybe getting my pawn to g5. Well, there are a lot of ideas. I like Veselin's choice of g5, but mostly as a chess fan, not really being a Veselin supporter. If I was one, of course I'm supporting my boy Anish, but g5 makes things a lot more interesting again, and I think this game might heat up somewhat unexpectedly, because I was already seeing this come to a very peaceful end soon, but g5 put some more fire into the position, so that's good to see. Okay, I would move back to the game of the day.
Sorry. Brief update here. Peter went for the immediate e4, which is logical in line with this plan. And Vichy decided to grab some space by going c5. This position became sharper somehow. Queen back. I don't know. Could also think about queen e5. Queen back, knight somewhere. Here, let's say.
Yeah, I
If
like
white
White's,
manages to coordinate, he can be seriously better.
I like White's position over here. Well, once again, I like to play with the bishops, and f4 seems like something that is not too risky on White's part. Of course, I would first develop my bishop probably, but you know, you also have cases where f4 could immediately run into some trouble
Here, yeah,
In
I'm
this
not sure.
case-
Bishop c4, rook d8,
Yeah.
bishop d3. I don't want to allow all that business.
Exactly. So I would have to prepare it, but potentially it could be played in 2 or 3 moves down the road.
Yeah, but you want to go here, and then you want to push.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sharp.
It's getting sharper. It's getting sharper.
Speaking of getting sharper,
B3 has been played. Okay. B3 is a big decision by Karyakin. This is always kind of a moment where White has to put some time into whether he wants to play this move, because of course it's weakening his king somewhat, a4 and 8 takes b3, or even a4 a3, creating some kind of a mating square on b2. The good side of this move is that you can now play bishop to c4, and it's actually a very important maneuver. I think this shows, Jan, that this game is not going anywhere near the idea of knight f4, bishop takes f4, rook takes f4. I think Karyakin is planning to go bishop c4, knight d4, and we're in for a much sharper battle than I initially expected.
that's probably correct. Gotta give him credit. He understood he can't play passively. Found an idea. Put the bishop here. Go knight d4. Put pressure. And could go either way.
Yeah, it could still go either way, but this is definitely making this game even a little bit more tense. So now the question to Caruana, how to use this move b3 in his advantage. a4 sounds like a very normal idea, but once again, after bishop to c4,
Thing is, even if this bishop recaptures here, it's normally quite hard to get to
it's
the
normally
king.
White's main idea after a takes b3, bishop takes b3. His bishop does a great job not only attacking e6, which is one of the most important points in these types of positions, but also defending the king. So a4, a takes b3 is not what Fabiano should do. a4, a3 is sometimes a better idea, but also that is very committal. So big decision for Fabiano. Actually, Karyakin putting some pressure on Caruana right now, but I still like Black's chances. Somehow I have the feeling that Black shouldn't be doing too bad in this position either.
Yeah. A4 is a tempting move, but it's not the only move, because yeah, this is not a big threat. So if you put the queen here, White goes bishop c4.
Bishop to g7 looks very tempting in a position like
Yeah, I
this.
was trying to somehow create checkmating threats, but the problem is this knight on d4 is quite well defended and doesn't look like there's any way through.
How about a typical idea in these positions, something like rook to c8 instead of bishop g7?
Just take the guy.
Yeah, I just want to take it on the next move, yeah. Not quite sure if it's going to be working. Probably, and if I play something like bishop to g7 now.
There's no threats, right? Like this knight is still...
Yeah, this knight is still holding on. I like to play for these long-term kind of compensation, but I guess here I have very little to show for it. So you could even just go knight f3 and start putting pressure on me by playing queen to g3 on the next move and so on. This is actually not the right way.
No, it looks like a good idea. I'm impressed with this b3, bishop c4. I wouldn't have thought of that.
How about queen e5 and bishop to e3? Is that a way for Black to stop this from happening?
It's a weird little move. You want to go here, yeah?
Yeah. Bishop to c5.
No, the drawback is you can't take this guy anymore.
Yeah, that is actually very true. And something like rook g8, and this is actually also typical in these positions, that you start swinging over your rook on the third rank. Rook h3 looks strong here.
Yeah, rook h3, rook g3. I don't know, here it feels like the trend is Karyakin's friend for a change. Yeah, rook h3 looks good.
Actually, a very big move, b3. I'm suddenly starting to get a little worried for Black. I know about this idea, but somehow it did not appear to me so far. Black has played rook to g8. Okay, that makes sense. White has replied with g3, defending the g2 pawn. But, okay, at least if we think back about the line that we were just looking at, there's no more swing of the rook to h5, and actually rook to g8 was kind of helpful in some cases when knight f4, knight g6 was being played. But overall, the problems remain the same. White wants to go bishop c4, knight d4. I do like this move, rook g8. I think it's a clever one.
Just rolling out options for White. No more queen h4. No more rook, any rook to h3. No more knight g3, even though that was unlikely. Makes a lot of sense. Now, yeah, once again, decision time for the Fabster. Queen e5 still looks like
Yeah.
sensible move, but you gotta have a game plan after this. Ah, maybe this move. Looks a little sick, but why not?
Yeah, well, if you can get your rook into play.
Because this seems to work, no?
Yeah, no, this seems like...
Seems actually to win.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a clever move.
Another funny idea is the one you mentioned before, Jan, is knight to g1 instead of bishop to c4. Because we're kind of inviting that move after queen e5.
That's true. Then again, yeah, the knight got a little distracted from this square, but you could argue it's gonna be back. But
Yeah,
let's say this and queen c3. I believe the endgame is still fine for me, right? Or especially no.
No, you're right. This is good for black, actually. The endgame should... Because my pawn on c3 is not even weak, so...
Oh, it's actually quite nasty.
Yeah. No, I don't like knight g1. You're right. Bishop to c4. Well, I should probably stick to this plan. But how to deal with that rook g4?
Bit of a nuisance. I was thinking about this, but this feels like playing for a draw, and I'm not sure one can even manage at the moment. Black is a pawn up. Why need something fast here? This move could be clever.
Yeah, I have to go queen to g5 most likely. And you
now some active.
Yeah, some queen b6. Yeah, this could be the right way for white, but this is very draw oriented, I would say.
Yeah,
which
black
is not
still
surprising
fine after queen c5, but
yeah,
if white wants to simplify, something like this could be an option. So still sharp battle. Exchange of ideas here. I was very impressed with b3, but I'm also impressed. Okay, rook j is a natural move, but you still gotta make one of many natural moves.
No, I think that so far, besides the move f takes e6, once again, I think that the players are playing very good chess over here. They're definitely coming up with solutions to some of the problems that we're coming across when analyzing this position. So far, I think it's a very high-level game.
Yeah. One of these two guys, get used to their faces, is gonna be the challenger for Magnus Carlsen. Vishy Anand, the question comes up once in a while, cannot win this tournament. Oops, sorry, Anish cannot either. Where do we have the table? Here. Because Vishy does not get the tiebreaker in either case. If Vishy wins, these guys draw. Everybody has 8 points, but then Caruana would hold the best tiebreaker. Well, of course, if Vishy wins, and this game between Caruana and Karyakin finds a winner, one of them will have 8.5. So Anand is out of the run for first place, no matter how the results go. But it's still a very important factor for Fabiano Caruana, because if Anand wins, Caruana needs to draw. If Anand doesn't win, Caruana needs to win.
Yeah. Okay, rook to g8, and now a big decision for Fabiano once again. But some of those lines that we just saw after queen e5, rook g4 would really combine some of the plans that we've seen before. So actually, of course, it would be very nice for black to get one of his rooks into play in the center, and it's not that easy. But rook g4, I like that idea. So queen e5 is the move that I guess we're expecting to see.
Yeah, I'm not sure. King e7 is also natural enough move. Rook g4 immediately feels a little too deep. Might be genius to stop bishop c4, but provoking h3, I don't think it's worth to tempi here. Even though h3 is an ugly move for white to make, because it weakens the g3 pawn.
Sure, but I do get my bishop to c4 on the next move.
Yeah, don't like it either. We'll see what Fabi goes for. Queen e5 or king e7 feel normal. Fight is still sharp. Is the fight becoming a little less sharp in Levon's pursuit for greatness by sacrificing a pawn with black pieces? That sentence didn't make any sense, but I always start my sentences and I don't know how to finish them.
Very enthusiastic.
Like a writer. So queen b8, bishop b3, rook b3, Hikaru just took this guy now, went a4. Still an extra pawn.
Yeah, Jan, to be honest, if I would, by looking at this position, I have the feeling that white's just a bit better. I want to go queen f5 and maybe a5 if I get the time, just getting my pawn to safety. And, well, once again, I feel that Levon is happy to equalize here, but no more than that.
Okay, equalize on the spot.
Bishop to b4. Okay, I have to take.
A5 looks normal, but I guess I'm happy snacking this pawn. Doesn't feel like I'm worse with black. Nah, this
No,
equal.
this is not much. It's hard for me to use the a pawn. Okay, so bishop to b4, actually exchanging my defender, the
It's a
pawn.
strange move because normally you don't want to exchange this bad bishop, but honestly, this bishop isn't doing all that much. It can't go to c5, and yeah. so
Would it be
watching.
possible for me to take and play something like e4? You're just gonna take my e4 pawn, obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have too many pieces. You can't pin me.
No.
Say here, whatever. I can even go here. But anything works for black. This could just be a draw.
Okay, what if I go rook d1 and rook d8?
Okay.
Rook d8 check. Takes.
Now you have some queen d7. I gotta be a little careful, but I have rook a8 back.
And if I play simply e4 would be knight to d6, I guess.
Yeah.
So queen d7
Gotta go back.
and e4 now.
But I feel like I'm active enough on.
Really? Queen to c6? I felt that this could be unpleasant.
First of all, if takes. Here I am active enough.
Yeah, you're getting your rook to, I guess, a2.
Let's move by move. But yeah, this holds because king g3, knight h5, and this pawn is hanging. King g1 is a draw. So what do you do? Queen c6.
Queen c6 instead of this, but perhaps it runs into the
Well,
same idea.
Same trick, yeah?
Yeah, same idea.
Takes Czech Republic and rook a2. Yeah, it's just draw.
Okay, so actually this might actually peter out into something a little bit more boring than expected.
Yeah, it also looks like Levo might have to do this, right? Because if you allow a5, all of a sudden you could be in a world of hurt.
I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. Not only is it weakening the a pawn potentially, also the e pawn is directly left without a defender. So honestly, I do expect bishop to b4 to be played.
Especially since the alternatives don't look very enticing at all. Yeah, he's gonna do that, and it seems like it should be a draw. I think I predicted because I expertly predicted 4 draws, which is always the safe prediction. Or no, I guess I predicted an Anish win.
You predicted an Anish win.
Yeah, that's always a safe prediction as well. Nah.
No, I actually am hoping to see hg and rook h6. Like that's my favorite idea
Well,
for the
this is
moment.
sort of a sick idea to just give an exchange. Like,
Well, I mean, Anish has to show some spirit now.
but still, I don't know. King g7 looks more natural, but it's an exchange.
Yeah, I must say, after king e7, I'm not quite sure what my point was. Could I go f6 again?
King e6.
Rook h1. But now actually you always have rook to g8 to defend this pawn, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Huh. Maybe I don't really have much of a momentum going on after king to e7.
I find it very hard to believe.
How about preparing the idea with rook to h1, because I'm not sure you can defend your knight.
Tricks. Here, yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. Knight to
Tricks.
c2, yeah?
How does this work? Takes here, takes here.
Oh, this looks horrible. Okay, I have to
But
take
this
on
is
f7.
this is better compensation.
Oh, I like this
These
compensation.
guys are very bad. Like
Yeah.
this position, I'd play with white.
King takes e3 and knight e4 looks very
Yeah.
promising.
I was gonna say every day of the week, but that's probably a bit too much. But on Sundays, I'd go for it. No, this looks nice for white. White is running very little risk here because black can't really get active. No, this seems fine. How do we manufacture this? Our rook h1, knight c2. Are you threatening anything? I still feel like this is a bluff.
No, I'm planning to go rook f6.
Go here.
so
Show me the money.
I will play rook takes f6. Knight e4 check. Rook h7.
What are you ever threatening? No, I'm losing.
Knight to d5.
Okay, I shouldn't allow that. Maybe it's not a bluff. Some nice knights.
I mean,
yeah, this I can see.
my point is that if white wants to do anything, he probably has to go for something sharp like this, because
The other position...
Yeah, the other position also would be possible.
It's
Takes on
sharp
g5, yeah. No, it's either this one or going for this. But here I feel like I'm not even sure if white has the initiative or if it's just unclear altogether. The other one, at least I feel that I'm sort of the one who's attacking.
I agree,
whether
but
it's
you're
good or
also the
not.
one who's an exchange down.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, we're not all materialistic like you, Jan. So
I think we all are. Deep down, you idealists out there, I don't believe a word you're saying. But yeah, this line was cute. Rook h1, knight c2, and now takes. This one I quite like, because if I get this pawn, I'll always have long-term compensation.
yeah.
So let's see what Mr. Anish comes up with. Anish is your pal for many years. You're the same age. You're both from Holland. What's your honest opinion on his clothing style? Does he... I'm accused of dressing like a 50-year-old, but I almost am 50. He's 21 and he dresses like me. Is he overdoing it, or do you think it's professional and good?
You mean the suits or
The suits and the ties and...
Well, he's a married man.
squares.
Are you married, Jan?
I'm not married.
So that's where I think he makes up for the age difference.
That's another question. Should he be married at 21? But they seem very happy. And
No,
Sopiko,
of
of course,
course,
works
of
here.
course.
So we're not gonna...
No, I'm not hating on the marriage. I'm just saying that I think Anish is a mature guy, you know. He's well, actually, I've never thought that his dressing style was so bad.
No, I think it's good. I'm just wondering, because I know how I dressed when I was 21, which was different. But he seems like...
Oh,
That's what annoys me about him, frankly. He is mature beyond his years. He's achieved way too much already. He's married at 21.
Yeah.
He's 2800. He's very witty, very well-spoken, a good writer.
Like, where are
he
you
knows
gonna
every
be when
opening in the world. Like,
Yeah, what are
Where
you
to
gonna
go
do
from here?
when you're 40? Yeah.
you can't
It's,
have your chess style become more solid. Like, there's really no natural arc.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Anish is about to enter like this sort of second youth, but I do not expect to see him walking around in any other type of clothes anytime soon. I like his dressing style. I think that there are players, I'm not going to name names, who could use a bit of fashionista around
Makeover?
them. But I think Anish does a pretty good job. He could maybe wear slightly more youthful suits and so on. But otherwise, I think he's doing pretty good with the image. I think it's more the draws that are bothering most people at this point.
No, I agree. I was just curious, you as a young person, if you think this is strange or if you just think it's a professional thing to do.
I think it's a professional thing to do. I like it actually.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think, most credit for his dressing style goes to his wife, Sopiko, who I believe chooses most of the outfits, right?
Yeah, I do think that Sopiko has a large influence there, for sure.
Anish did take on g6, which, leads to this other messy position. I think he more or less has to go g5 now, trying to get some squares for his knights, even though it also gives black some squares. But it looks consistent, having taken on g6. If you play some slow move, whatever, just rook f7, king g7, black is fine.
Yeah, no, g5 has to be played, and it's actually interesting. Why is black not taking and playing knight h5 over here?
Why isn't he?
Yeah.
He is, right?
Yeah, we were trying knight h7 before, I
No,
think.
we were trying this.
We were trying this. I'm somehow, once again, I like to be
Something
more
like
of
this,
the
yeah.
aggressor, and here I feel that I'm under pressure as well. Maybe it's because my king is a little bit shaky. Although rook f7 does run into...
a bit helpful, yeah?
Yeah, knight h6, yeah. So maybe rook f8 would make more sense. And... No, there are prospects for white to be doing well over here with knight e4, knight f6 next.
Yeah, it's still a very sharp position somehow.
No, actually, it's not... There's a whole lot of play left in this position.
You can't go knight f4 yet, I would guess, because of knight f6. Yeah, it just wins.
Yeah. Okay, so Anish is currently thinking about g5, but I guess that he spotted... you
Gotta
should go for this.
What was the other line? Knight h7 looks
Knight
so
h7.
strange, looks so passive, but I don't buy this move at all.
No, this doesn't look good, no. No.
If you
Actually,
can win this pawn very quickly, but nah, I don't think Veselin is even going to think about it.
probably that's the big difference between Anish and I. Like, I see rook h6, that previous line, and I'm just kind of excited about it. I would probably really go for it in the game. But Anish is probably really taking a close look at both of these options, and maybe he found a better option, because here you're not even material down, but it does seem like black is under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. And of course, it's playing for nuances, but that's, the kind of chess you have to be able to play at the top level, especially if you're a Catalan player and get these kind of endings. It never looks like a whole lot, but it's very important to keep a bit of pressure. It looks like he's been doing a good job. If he finds g5 now, and it looks like he's played rook g1, and I'll take everything back I just said.
Well, rook to g1 strikes me as a very poor move, Jan.
Overcautious, because now black can go for this. I'm not sure if it's forced, but it looks good enough, and this knight keeps controlling this square. This knight is this square. Buys absolutely nothing.
Jan, maybe you were right. Maybe he should be wearing like pink shirts and stuff with like spots
Levon
on
style,
it.
yeah?
Yeah, well, no. Levon is really like, he looks like he just came off from surfing once in a while. No disrespect to Levon's dressing style, but it's very hippie.
No, he has his own style. He likes bright colors and
Yeah, exactly. But I think bright colors, maybe some pink, maybe wearing a cap. I don't know, like maybe Anish should switch it up, because this move rook to g1 is not what I was hoping to see.
The problem is if you're wearing a tie, especially while playing, there's not a lot of oxygen going to your brain. People can see that if they listen to a couple hours of commentary, but maybe it also affected his play. Because rook g1, okay, his idea is to play g5 in all the comfort in the world, but why? Like, you want your rook on the h file anyway, should it open? I don't get it.
Now, rook to g1 is possibly one of the poorest moves I've seen Anish make. If he really played this move, and I'm still a little bit surprised, this is not looking good, Jan. This is a very, very soft move. I feel that g5 really gave him some chance of an edge, or at least an initiative. Rook to g1, I mean, I don't even think the rook is better placed on g1 in case you go g5 than on h1.
No, if you were gonna go rook g1, you could, maybe this is a terrible move, but you could think about this at least, and then king e1, g5, and go for it with both rooks here. But yeah, I don't know. This feels just like the right move.
That's a very strange decision. I can't say anything else. I'm a little bit confused by this even. I just don't understand this move at all.
Yeah, I'm also not sure what the point is. We'll keep an eye on it, but for now, yeah, after we just thought he had found some nuances, looks like he really hasn't. And yeah, g5 is a good move here for black. I'm not sure if it's forced, but it's quite logical. Either immediately or after some rook f8, rook f7. Black should be fine with this rook passive. How's the Svidler doing?
Well, it looks like the Svidler versus Vichy is trying to make it a high stakes game. What is it? What was it again? It's high stakes?
Stakes is high.
Stakes is high. Stakes is high. Well, stakes is getting high.
Stakes isn't that high in this game.
No, stakes is getting high, Jan. I think Peter is looking to play f5, bishop to f4, e5. I could see this becoming very exciting. Actually, even f5, f6 might be an idea once in a while. No, I think you're underestimating this. This could very well turn into an exciting game.
Watch me. Bang! I'm gonna take all the excitement out of it in very few moves.
Well, that is a bit of a slap in the face, I must admit. That's not a move that I considered. I can't even pin you. Can I go rook to e1 here?
I guess you have to, but here I do have this. So if you don't have anything direct, then you just gotta try to equalize somehow, which here you even can't.
Well, then this was just not a good move. But bishop to f5
I think you might have blundered this, frankly.
Can I take on f5?
You have to, but here only black can be better, no? Rook d8.
Queen to g4.
Okay, I'm worried about nothing. I don't know, knight d5, queen e2. There's many tempting moves.
I just have hopes of playing f6, but you could even consider just stopping it. No, this is not good.
Even this, let's say.
Well, that's really strange, Jan. I mean, maybe we're seeing some Like so far today, I'm already seeing two kind of strange moves. I must admit, I also missed bishop to f5, but just rook to g1 by Anish, and then f4 is not very well timed here. It sure seems like
it's very bad timing because you can whatever. Queen c2, I think, looked like the natural move.
Yeah, queen c2 and then rook e1, rook a1 perhaps.
Yeah, no, this is the move you play. F4, and Vichy is not gonna miss a chance like this. It's very much in his style too.
So Peter might even be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, the computer is getting some very weird line here. Takes and bishop to d4. f5 takes here. Takes and bishop e5. And he sort of equalizes, but if you have to do miracles like this with white to just equalize, it doesn't bode well.
Okay, so that's two strange moves in a row. Maybe Fabi is the one who's bringing back some exciting play, because these two games suddenly seem to take a course that I'm not really loving as a spectator. What has happened since we left off last in this game?
Rook g8, g3. He played king e7, which was on our top 2 list of moves.
Yeah.
Together with queen e5, bishop c4 is logical, and Fabi decides to fight against knight d4 by going for this maneuver, which you've also mentioned earlier, bishop e3. Now, knight f4 seems natural. When I'm curious, does he want to take or does he want to go for something like this?
I guess bishop to d4 is more exciting, but I mean, if I get my bishop to e5.
Yeah, like this pawn is not the end of the world, right? If I get checkmated, it is, but maybe it is a problem.
But do I have to move it right away if you go queen e2?
Probably not. And now there's also this, and if takes bishop b3, at least
there's made
some checkmates. So this looks interesting. And okay, I'm not sure if you take on h5 here, but what I'm trying to say is, even if you do here, I wouldn't be very worried with black.
No, once again, I think the endgames are so good in this structure, especially with the bishop on e5, that you can almost lose any pawn as long as it's not the d, e, or f pawn. Which of course give you all that compensation. So here again, I think black just has a decent position.
I'd go as far and say you can lose any pawn that is not the e6 pawn.
Yeah, actually,
d and f I can actually live with on.
Yeah, but the e pawn is, you're right, the e pawn is very vital to black's positional advantage here.
So it's still incredibly sharp. This line made a lot of sense, right? Like knight f4 looks very natural. Yeah, takes would be a little sad, because you also have to consider gf4 now.
I think gf and f5 would be very dangerous.
Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah, it's just bad.
This would this is exactly what white wants.
E5, f5.
Yeah, too many ideas here for white. No, bishop to d4 would be the given move, and
you can take here immediately, which I missed. Brought to you by the computer.
I also missed it. Okay, bishop to e5 most likely.
Because once again, giving up this bishop all of a sudden feels risky, right? I was wondering about this, but now I'm getting checkmated. Rook h1, rook h7. Not gonna be able to do it. So we have to sort of ignore this. Maybe it's not such a big difference.
Yeah, knight f4, a4.
Back and tend to jump here.
Again, we're going for this position, although black has won a move or two.
Yeah, well, take your bishop.
Yeah, that's not really tempting. This should be better for white again.
Yeah, might be some compensation, but with the bishop gone, no real attack. Not much. Even though, maybe I'll checkmate you. You can take, I guess, and if rook takes, bishop b3.
Yeah, I'm always a bit skeptical of black's position if he loses the dark squared bishop.
So how can we avoid losing it? We can offer a move repetition, but that's probably not all that tempting to Fabi.
Going back a move, Jan, is there a bishop c3 somewhere maybe? Like, maybe. I don't even, maybe even instead of bishop to e5, was that possible?
I just didn't see there was a legal square. Yeah, that looks much better actually. Now a4. You can't touch his bishop here.
Yeah, actually the c3 square is just as good as the e5 square.
Yeah, that's much stronger, of course. Because now, whatever. I'm not sure if it's checkmate, but it starts feeling like it's dangerous with this bishop here.
Yeah, and I have bishop b5 ideas if you take on b3 with the bishop, at least to be taken into account.
Absolutely. I'm starting to dream of like rook takes a2, bishop takes a2, rook a8, another rook a2, queen a7. It's like very dangerous.
Yeah, for those who are following the game very closely and are interested in the structure, I would recommend one game that I remember. It was Shirov against Kozul. It was a very spectacular attack in this kind of style. Rook a2, like I think rook c8, rook c3 with a pawn on b2 even happened. So there's definitely potential for mates in this line. But of course, it does require white to make a few inaccuracies.
Yeah, and in fairness, we should point out, oops, sorry, this was my crappy moves, that white has other options like cb3, so that wasn't entirely forced. Looks like, to my surprise at least, Karyakin's played rook f3, not going for knight f4 immediately, which is a decent move, but it looks like your idea is still to go knight f4, so
yeah,
doesn't this lose like a tempo?
I mean, unless there's a smart knight jump, but it looks like this should be played, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really get it, because the rook, well, we've seen these rook maneuvers before, but here it can't swing over to the king side, and now it's going to be harder to take this pawn. I'm not sure, can you still take it? No, then queen h5.
Yeah, now the rook is actually hanging.
Yeah.
Looks a little clumsy, rook to f3.
Yeah, not a big fan.
I think a4 would be
4 is the normal
the most normal move.
Unless there's some, no, but there's no threat.
Okay, one idea could
Knight
be to go rook.
C3 or some sick move? Sorry, go ahead.
Rook to d3 would be... Well, knight c3 is actually an interesting one, but rook to d3 just to get rid of the bishop coming to d4 could be his idea, maybe. And then getting knight to d4 in.
Oh, okay. Feels very slow, though. I go somewhere, I don't know, here.
Yeah, bishop to h6, knight to d4. Maybe some knight f5
that's
ideas.
His point. Okay. He always has a point, this Mr. Karyakin. Still a very sharp position. I have no clue what's going on, but he has managed to find some active squares for his pieces.
Yeah, no, once again, it's always, once he gets the knight to d4 and the bishop to c4, it could be very dangerous for black, because those are the two best squares in this position for those two light pieces. So, once again, Fabiano probably wasn't, I don't think he was expecting this idea of rook f3 and rook d3, but
Fabiano's fighting against it. He went rook g4, another interesting move.
Wow, but it's getting a lot more complicated.
Here he wants to take, yeah? Or can you take?
I suppose
so,
he does, yeah. And can the knight move somewhere and attacking the rook, like knight to g1 or something like that?
Knight g1, but I'm gonna take this guy.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Okay, so knight c1 maybe. More sensible.
Still gonna take this guy.
Yeah, and I think you should be, unless there's some...
So took a pawn if I have any decent square for my bishop.
Bishop h6 is possible, right?
Here there's knight b3.
Yeah.
Which is probably
No, but even, I can even change the queens in the position like this, I think. Like bishop to h6, knight b3,
yeah,
queen to e5 is great for black, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, this looks very good.
In general, you have two bishops and a pawn against a knight and a rook. That's not a material disadvantage. Someone studied this exact material distribution and concluded that the two bishops outscore knight, rook, and bishop, knight, rook, and pawn from like all games played in a database. So, yeah, here black can be very comfortable. How do we get here? I was rook g4 and then rook d3, which is of course by no means forced.
Yeah.
But that's the level these guys are playing at. It's all prophylactic thinking. He's figured out, okay, this is the plan that white has, rook d3, knight d4. I gotta fight against it. How do I do it? I go rook g4, so rook d3 is harder to play. And knight f4 is a plan apparently Karyakin didn't like, when he can choose if he wants to go here and back, or if he wants to take, which we didn't like earlier, but here maybe it's a little different with the rook already here. This other rook coming. Still don't like it much.
Don't like it too much, but with rook g1 you have a very, very concrete idea there as black, so maybe it would be a bit more interesting to go for something like this. Still not a big fan of this change in structure. I would prefer to go bishop to d4. Yeah.
Because this pawn... Okay, what you gonna do? One problem is this rook on g4. If we now switch to a kingside attack, it's not gonna be a big help from over here.
No, but bishop to c3 once again would be logical. Actually, is white not
I
simply dropping?
blundered the knight. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the rook on f3 is now in the way of everything, and the rook on g4 too.
Ah, yeah, no, sorry.
So he probably
Totally
can
missed that.
take queen
Then,
to...
yeah. Then Fabi got what he wanted.
Yeah.
Whatever, queen e2, but then once again, I don't know. Even if you go back with the rook, at least you've completed your plan.
Yeah. No, looks like a clever move by Fabiano. It also seems to be the case that at least one of the games has seen a bunch of exchanges, and we were already a little bit worried about, or at least I was, about this. Aronian has found bishop to b4, it looks like, and it has resulted in a mass exchange of pieces.
Yeah, this was more or less the drawing move.
Mhm.
And we've looked at this, even e4 or something similar. Takes. Okay. Not a lot of action left. The players will shake hands very quickly, unless Hikaru finds a way to blunder a pawn here. But nah, it's just a draw.
Doesn't
I was
seem
just
like-
wondering, using my rook endgame expertise, can I tie myself up badly enough to lose this? But I don't think I can.
I think
because
you
here
have a
rook
nice,
e1.
yeah, you have a nice rook left to create some counterplay,
Yeah, it's
with-
just a draw.
and even you could consider going rook f3, rook b3 if you're very determined to make a draw.
Yeah, these things are not lost at this level, like ever. No, this is gonna end in a draw probably within the minute. And our friend Anish, rook hg1, we weren't fans of. Topalov didn't go g5, he went knight back to e6. Probably it's still too late for g5 now, because here this pawn comes under immediate fire. Knight e4,
Yeah,
rook
rook
d4.
d4.
Yeah, maybe check first. No, this just looks bad.
No, I like black's position. I think black is very comfortable at this point of the game. Once again, rook g1. I'm really not a big fan of this move.
You gotta be careful here. Like
Yeah.
activates, like you can get worse with white.
For sure, no. This
Easily.
is not going in the right direction for Anish. Although I don't think he's in big trouble either. It's just his last move. He must have been, at least at this point, I imagine he realizes that he's not doing too well. Bishop f5, by the way, has not been played by Vichy in the game against Svidler.
No, I just saw it out of the brink of my eyes, that word. That he's gotten something similar though. He went f4, rook ad8, queen c2, and bishop d5.
All right.
Which I believe is a slightly safer but more passive version in a way, because
Yeah.
it gives white this option, which I think Svidler has to go for. bc, ed, knight d5. And this is sort of a draw. Because, yeah, I don't think you can let this knight live.
I kind of have the feeling that maybe white could be a bit better after queen f2.
Oh, you can let it live. Oh, okay. I thought knight e3 was too big, but then just rook e1 and
Mhm.
nothing really happened. Yeah.
At least it doesn't seem to be risky for white.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Do I agree? Yeah, I think. I do agree. Still, feels like it's not very risky for black either, frankly.
No, he should get always some counterplay on the
These
b-file
pawns
in
aren't
case.
so weak.
Yeah, in case he does get
Even
attacked.
this one. Put the queen here. Or
Yeah.
something like this. Vichy should draw in his sleep. He's probably awake. Is there any other move after bishop d5?
Well,
Rook
e5
e1?
E5 looks very
Yeah,
not
e5 looks
recommendable.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes f6. Well,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
strategically it looks bad. And yeah, is there some trickery here? Probably not, right? Takes. No, just pawn now.
No.
You can still, maybe you can make miracles happen, but then you might as well do it immediately. No, looks like Vichy, yeah, looks like f4 by Peter was premature. He wasn't ready for
Yeah.
all these pins. And, well, I like bishop f5 better, but what Vichy's done also looks very safe.
Yeah. And indeed, a draw has been agreed in the game of Hikaru Nakamura against Aronian. And I guess the only thing I can really say about this game is that probably Aronian played a very solid game today. He thought he was into a little bit of trouble, at least some slight difficulties, but he played very actively and just equalized comfortably, I would say. So
Yeah, we haven't really looked at the complications. I keep coming back mentally to this very point where it feels tempting to me to play this slightly slower, playing with e4.
Yeah.
Because f4 gave Aronian this chance to sacrifice a pawn. And it seems like he had just enough play to stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah, draw there means both players finish the tournament on 50%, which for Hikaru is probably... I don't think it would have been a success before the tournament, and he's not going to be happy. But given that he's been on -2 for most of the event, it was a nice comeback in the last couple of rounds.
Yeah.
So he won't be...
I think Aronian leaves the tournament with a slightly more disappointed feeling. Of course, he was... What was his peak score? +2 or +1?
+2.
+2. And then having kind of a bad run near the end of the event and finishing on 50%. Really had his chances here and there. Played some very interesting games, especially the game against Caruana, where he had the black pieces, sticks out to me, where he managed to create play in a very original fashion.